Colleagues, today we are trusted with the responsibility as advocates for climate justice South Africa to lead the discussion around the climate change impacts in the KwaZulu-Natal province, and also giving an outlook to the more affected community, being the community of eThekwini municipality. And we had brought different stakeholders that are within the community, that with an interest in order to drive a discussion that will have a meaningful impact in terms of policy development and in terms of the response plan that the municipality seeks to constitute. So without wasting any further time, I would want to introduce the people that are going to be doing, that are going to be part and parcel of the panel. But I would request, before I will introduce them, but I will ask them to remain seated on their side so that they will be able to see the presentation. And then after the presentation is done, we will then request that they come in the front so that we facilitate the engagement. But the person who's going to be leading the presentation for today is Ms. Lebogang Duli, who is the current chairperson of Advocate for Climate Justice South Africa, a young woman who founded this organization, and we met through a common idea of saying, let's try and bring about justice in the South African context. But also that's going to be joining me in the panel will be Mr. Smiso Bengu, who is a climate change scientist, senior climate change scientist. We may have to make that clear, from eThekwini municipality. And we brought him with an understanding that he needs to give us an outlook of how the municipality wants to respond into the challenges that are being faced by the community around in the breadth and the width of eThekwini municipality. And what is it that they are doing in terms of policy formulation in the region like eThekwini in order to respond to these catastrophic conditions. And secondly, in the panel, I'll have Thobani Zigalala, who joined us earlier yesterday to have an insight on what the political school of climate change looks like, but also is the current member of the South African Youth Council in KwaZulu-Natal. We want to have an understanding of how young people are affected and what is it, the manner that they would want communities and government to respond into the challenge. Lastly, we have Abahlali baseMjondolo, whom we believe they are the primary victims into the issues that we are dealing with. So we brought them also into the panel to have an absolute understanding of the challenges that are faced by the people whom are living with these challenges on a daily basis. I'll now hand over to Ms. Lebogang Duli to provide a presentation that has been done by Advocates for Climate Justice South Africa, and then after her, we will then take it into the panel discussion where we will also allow the room to engage the members of the panel on the inside. Not only we want to assure you, this discussion is informed with an interest to build a response plan into the issues we are facing. This is not a battlefield between us and different stakeholders. It's not a battlefield where we want to fight government. But time comes where government do not want to listen and does things that are not responsive into the issues of people in this country. Therefore, that's only time where we have to fight. But right now, we say, let's meet in the boardroom, let's engage, provide ideas, provide solutions, and we take it from there. Thank you very much.
Amandla. Thank you, comrades. I'm really sorry if you cannot see me. It's unfortunate that I'm very challenged in terms of my height. Indeed, my name is Lebogang Duli, and I am the chairperson of Advocates for Climate Justice South Africa. But before I begin my presentation, I think I want to begin by a very important slogan, which is a slogan that was very popular, or it came about around the 1960s when third wave feminism was introduced, which says personal is politics and politics is personal. And the reason why I am raising this is informed by the discussions that we had yesterday, of which when I was alone, I really reflected on the discussions and perhaps I was concerned. And the reason why I was concerned was mainly on the basis that we believe that this space is not political. And when you look and you analyze the slogan that I had just said, it clearly means, it says that our personal experiences are informed by political situations. And climate change is not an exception. it is the reason why today we are gathered here, and the reason why there is climate change was because somewhere, someone, a group of people decided that we want to implement a system that is so exploitative, not just to us as human beings, but also to the natural resources. Hence, for them to be able to accumulate capital and for them to be able to maximize profits. And that is why today we are faced with the challenge of climate change. And if it continues, if the system continues, because I think one of the comrades had indicated yesterday that the system is able to sustain itself on the basis that it continues exploiting. And if it continues, we're not going to be able to defeat climate change. And for us to be able to actually address climate change, we need to do away with the system. But obviously, we can't do away with the system on the basis that systems cannot change overnight. So that's why we come up with these mitigation and adaptation strategies that we discuss. But I just want us to do away with the notion to say that this is not a political space. This is a political space. Even our existence is political. I mean, in our homes, those are political spaces. Our churches, our schools, our workplaces, everything about us, our entire existence is political. So I want us to desist the notion to say this space is not political. It's political, and we must have a political understanding and an ideological background. The fact that we want to move into social ownership of renewable resources, the fact that we speak about Pan-African approaches in terms of climate change, those things are ideological topics. So I think we really, really need to change our mindsets. But anyways, my presentation is not on that, comrades. So just to begin my presentation, basically the purpose of our presentation is for us to be able to dive into the critical nature of climate change in our province, and also for us to be able to discuss the ongoing challenges that are faced by mainly eThekwini municipality, because eThekwini municipality is one of the most affected municipalities in the province, and also perhaps explore the key aspects of the impact, whether it's within our social structures, in our economy, our education system, our infrastructure, and as well as our waste management problem, because we have a crisis in terms of our waste management in the province. Maybe one could just tap into the nature of our climate change. But I think that the nature of our climate change in a province, for us to be able to understand it, we need to look at it in our historical context, the historical context of our climate change, and that will be able to shed the light in terms of us understanding the recurring disasters that we are currently experiencing as a province, particularly the issues of flood and obviously droughts in the north side of the province. When you look at the history of our climate impacts in the province, it dates back to the 1950s, and obviously there has been a series of events. If you know, you've been born on the other side of the 1990s, you know, around the 1987s, there was, KZN did experience floods during that time, 2017, and obviously 2022 being the most devastating, where we lost a lot of lives. We experienced social and economic and environment implications such as disruptions in our infrastructure. There was an issue in terms of our education system. You found that it was difficult for teaching and learning to occur during the period. I mean, majority, we are in a rural province, and also because of our historical injustices, we know that majority of learners that were impacted during the time, it's learners within the Black dominated communities. So, and understanding the nature of our Black dominated communities, we know it was impossible for the education and as well as the teaching process to take place. But also it also, okay, sorry about that, colleagues. Okay, it's not really. Oh, this one. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, switch it up. Okay, it's not moving. It's not moving. I want to. Okay, now it's moving. Okay, I want to move my notes, so now the thing is. Yeah, it's not. Okay, now it's moving. Okay, I'm really sorry about that. I apologize, comrades. But also, I mean, as I said earlier on, it also problematized our already existing waste management crisis, and also other basic services such as water and electricity. I mean, in KZN, we are really struggling in terms of the water crisis. We have a huge problem in that regard. But in essence, I mean, it exacerbated like our already existing socio-economic triple crisis, which is unemployment, poverty, and inequalities, which is something that is experienced by everyone across the country. But the objectives that we intend to achieve through this presentation is the fact that we want to highlight the urgent needs for us to address climate change issues in KwaZulu-Natal. As I said, that climate change is a triple, it's a threat multiplier, which means the currently existing socio-economic challenges that we are faced with, they'll be worse, and they are worse. So we see the need to urgently address climate issues that we are currently facing in the province, and also for us to actually encourage proactive measures among stakeholders, which is ourselves, government, the private sector, as well as the general communities, for us to be able to foster resilient and also adaptive strategies. And just to touch base on the global context, we all know that climate change poses a significant threat, not just in our country, but at a global scale, which affects our ecosystems, our weather patterns. I mean, we've seen even today, yesterday, we had a clear weather, now today it's raining. And then it also affects our economies, but most importantly, it affects our well-being as our livelihood. Hence, we need an urgent collective action through the agreements that we know, through your Paris Agreement, your Kyoto Protocol, and so forth. For us to be able to limit our greenhouse gas emissions and obviously, reach a certain point of our temperatures. Now, for us to be able to understand the impact in our province, it's quite important that we look at the overview of our province in terms of our geographics and our demographics, and also maybe perhaps look into the characteristics of our climate. Now, the province of KwaZulu-Natal is the second largest in the country. We have a diverse topography, which includes our coastal areas, our inlands, we have mountains, and we also have grasslands. And we have a population of about 11 million people who are accounted for, obviously who are registered for, but obviously there's more because we do have foreign immigrants who cannot be accounted for because they are not registered within Home Affairs. And we have notable urban centers, which is your Durban, your Pietermaritzburg being our capital city, but then Durban is one of the world's growing urban areas. And we do have a harbor which is right behind the hotel, and it's one of the 10 largest worlds and the busiest harbors in the world. And you find that our Durban port, it handles over 30 million of tons of cargoes a year, which is worth more than 100 billion. We do have another port in Richards Bay, which is mostly used for coal exports, and that port probably has about 12 containers per year, so it exports a maximum of 12,000 containers a year. And both of these ports, combined, they a year they make up like 78% of the tonnage in the country. So in terms of the vulnerability of our province on the basis of and why we are vulnerable or prone to issues of climate change is because we have a very high population density. I mean, with an understanding that the reason behind our high population density is urbanization, where people actually move from rural areas and to come to urban areas to find greater opportunities, but also not taking into consideration that that's not only the case now. We do have like foreign immigrations, people that come from other countries to populate our, our cities. So which has then created a strain, particularly in Durban, which is, is our economic hub in a province, and it has become very difficult. We have insufficient resources to be able to actually deal with climate-related issues, and that's why we are so vulnerable, especially within the confinements of eThekwini municipality or region. And obviously with the socio-economic challenges, which quite dominant within the marginalized communities, and you find that our marginalized communities are less equipped in terms of how they can be able to respond to these climate issues, of which I have been making an emphasis on, that it exacerbates poverty and instability. Now, looking at eThekwini municipality, eThekwini municipality has a very significant role in our province, mainly because it's the largest metropolitan area, and it's also our powerhouse in terms of the economy. It's our economic powerhouse. It contributes significantly in terms of the different sectors, mainly your manufacturing, and trade, and tourism. So now when you look at the climate realities of eThekwini, is that eThekwini has experienced extreme weather events, all the series of events of this devastating extreme weather conditions that we've experienced, from particularly in the floods during 2017 and 2022. I mean, we've seen it in eThekwini, where a lot of quite a few people lost their lives. We've seen how people have become displaced, and obviously it has significance in terms of economic disruption. And also, just to look at the statistics within eThekwini, I think also the official from eThekwini can correct us if we are wrong, but when you look at the local models, the climate models of eThekwini, it was predicted that at some point we are going to experience an increase from 1.2 to 2.5 degrees Celsius during the mid-century. I think it's something that we've already experienced, and which was coupled when it was predicted that it was going to be coupled with an increase in an annual rainfall of about 10%. I mean, I think we've also experienced that, which has resulted in more frequent and intense storms. But also, in general, in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, we have had different impacts, and amongst being the social impacts. And one of the major impacts that we've experienced is the health implications. I mean, we know that high temperatures are linked with high incidence of heat-related illnesses such as exhaustion and heat strokes, and we've seen that it's been more prominent amongst the elderlies, amongst our children, and also we've been exposed to waterborne diseases such as your cholera, E. coli. I mean, after the floods, they had to shut down our beaches because of waste was washed into our beaches. So and then there was an issue of E. coli, where the water was contaminated with E. coli. So they had to then shut down the beaches for quite a few times. So yes, and also our communities are very vulnerable, not just on the basis of the triple threat crisis, but also on the basis of socializing, social cohesion, whereby, our communities, particularly in our townships, we have this social network that exists because of the nature of the spatial planning of our townships. Now, when we are faced with, these impacts, we find that then we become disintegrated. The communities within these spaces, they become disintegrated, and it puts them under a lot of pressure. Now we find that families become displaced, and we then face a lot of challenges in terms of our social service. Now it becomes difficult for people to actually access healthcare. You find that it's difficult for them to access social support, like social psychological support, and obviously it leads to an increased exposure to domestic violence, GBV. I mean, I think we've seen how the cases of GBV are also increasing because of this domestic violence, and also most importantly the issues of mental health. I think we're conversing to Tara, and I was letting her know how traumatic and how anxious I get when I experience, because I'm from Tongat. So, I mean, you've heard in the news how terrible, climate impacts is in that area. So every time there's rain or perhaps there's just changes in the weather conditions, I become very anxious. So we do have issues of mental health. And I think as time goes by, it's going to get worse. But also as I said, we do suffer in terms of the issues of displacement and mental health, and obviously the long-term displacement, of which is something that's going to get worse. We are definitely going to experience a lot of trauma, anxiety, and I said it's going to affect our community cohesion. And obviously it's going to reduce our ability to be employed, because the more you experience mental health issues, you become you are no longer productive, and then you become unemployable. Despite the fact that we're having a crisis in our economy, now yourself as an individual, you are not productive. It becomes difficult for you to be employed. You can't function physically, you can't function, psychologically. So, yes, and then it obviously going to lead to a lower quality of life. It has also impacted us in terms of our economy, our agricultural sector. I mean, we all know that in our country, agriculture is like the primary contributor in terms of our economy. The same applies into our province. We play a significant role in terms of agricultural production, and obviously with the climate change effects, it affects the crop yield stability, including our staple foods like maize, and obviously we know that majority of our population relies on staple foods, because we are a country that's only food secured at the national level, but at household level, the reality is that we are food insecure. So if we have a challenge in terms of us producing the staple foods that our people can afford, then it becomes a problem. So definitely it's going to have an impact in terms of our food security, and obviously our local economies, because in KZN we mostly depend on the informal economies as well. Majority of our people are employed in the informal sector as well. But also, we are currently experiencing an increase in terms of pest invasion. I know that where I come from, we now have an issue of pests. We have a lot of rodents and so forth, so we're having a challenging with that. And obviously with that, it's also going to impact in terms of our crops, our livestock. And I think someone was saying that in the north, they are now, they've lost a lot of livestock. So yes, and obviously it's going to lead to a greater reliance on pesticides, which is something that we cannot afford in terms of our agriculture, as we are trying to move towards a sustainable agricultural practices. And obviously it's going to further cause environment. It's going to be, and that's an environmental hazard. And also in terms of our tourism sector, as I said, that KwaZulu-Natal is very big in terms of sectors like manufacturing, agriculture, and another one is being tourism. We are a coastal country, coastal province, and we know with the climate change, we are facing serious risk in terms of that sector. And obviously it leads to beach erosions. I had said that for a certain period of time we had to close down our beaches. In terms of we've experienced a loss in terms of our marine diversity, our coastal infrastructure. If you go to the coastal, you'll see that our coastal infrastructure has been damaged. It also impacts our local tourist economies, where you find that some hotels, some B&B, some restaurants had to close down. and obviously most of our local businesses are also within the tourist sector. So it becomes a problem. But mainly you find that beyond that, people are now going to start being skeptical of considering Durban as a tourist destination, because now they are scared of the consistent floods that we are experiencing in the Durban area. But also in terms of employment, I mean, in our province, as I said, agriculture and tourism are the major sectors that contribute to our economy, of which means that there are the major employment sectors in our province. And with all the challenges that we are facing, it means that more and more people are going to lose their job, which is then going to add to the unemployment rate that we are already currently facing, which obviously, as I said, we also have, I mean, we are very high in terms of our informal sector. And again, you know how climate change will affect the informal sector. Now, if both our sectors are, both our formal and informal sectors are impacted, it means we are really, really going to have a problem in terms of high unemployment, further affecting our economy, of which obviously it's going to be a crisis that we need to be concerned about. It's also going to have cause educational disruptions. And I mean, we know that we are already facing a challenge. We have an unequal education system that is flawed, that does not respond to our challenges, and obviously that reflects the historical injustices that, you know, that has widened the gaps of inequalities. And now you have climate change impacts that are going to further widen these gaps that are already existing. And you find that, I mean, there have been disruptions of our school infrastructure. I mean, there's a school in Tongaat which was currently, you know, during the tornado, it was extremely damaged. Like, I don't think that they are going to go back to school anytime soon. So, and then obviously that has complicated educational continuity. As I said, it makes education, the teaching and learning process, very difficult. And beyond that, now we know that because of the limited access in terms of resources, now we still have to utilize schools as evacuation centers. Now it means that those schools that are still in good condition, they still need to be utilized as evacuation centers, which then again disturbs the teaching and learning process. Now we are definitely going to experience long-term effects, not just the ones that we are currently experiencing. There's going to be academic gap amongst learners, and obviously this is going to escalate to institutions of higher learning as well. And obviously there's going to be a time where it's going to be difficult to actually, have access to education, and we all know that it's mostly the disadvantaged that are going to have a problem in terms of that. But also the geographical barriers are also going to have contribute to that, with our roads and infrastructure being damaged, especially particularly in the rural areas. Already there are geographical barriers that prevent our learners to have access to education. Now we have the issue of climate change that is going to worsen those geographical barriers. And obviously we're going to have a more higher dropouts in terms of learners in our high schools, which means, and majority of being young girls, because we know that currently even those who are dropping out, it's majority young girls. And also in terms of our infrastructure, but when we analyze our infrastructure, infrastructural damage, I feel like we need to look beyond, that our government is irresponsible in terms of maintaining our infrastructure. The reality is that our spatial planning in the country still reflects, our it's a legacy of apartheid. It still has not been transformed like any other sphere of our society that has not been transformed. And it's still a reflection of the Group Area Act of the 1958, which is why it's so difficult, for not only for the government to maintain, but for us to be able to actually, for our infrastructure to be able to contain, the impacts of climate change. I mean, like, the displacement, you find that the people, like the non-white communities that had to be displaced and move away to particular areas which were, they were not conducive for people to actually have, to be able to deal with such issues, and people were displaced to areas that are prone to floods, to droughts, and so forth. So those issues, are also contributing factors to the fact that we experience so many infrastructural damages beyond the fact that the government is failing to maintain our infrastructure. But also, when you look at our transport infrastructure, again, there's a crisis there. You find that with an increase in our rainfalls, with the increase with the rainfall, our roads, we have issues with our roads, our railway networks. I mean, we've seen, but our railway networks, obviously, it goes beyond climate change. Our railway network in KwaZulu-Natal has not been, utilized since COVID, which means it goes beyond the issues of climate change. We've seen how our bridges have collapsed in the province, and obviously it hampers with our day-to-day operations in the country, which also tempers in terms of logistics and so forth. But also, that also affects the emergency service in terms of our government and any other stakeholders to be able to respond to critical incidences when we are faced with climate impacts. In terms of our utilities in the province and our services, we find that, with the previous floods, we experienced extreme, our water supply systems were highly damaged. And you find most of, for instance, I'll just make a reference to where I come from. Our water reserve was completely, written off. It took a very long time for us to get water supply. So they had to rebuild our water reserve, of which today we continue to experience the water crisis. At certain points, they need to cut off water so that they can be able to supply water sufficiently to everybody in the area. So, so we experienced that. And we also obviously experience other utility issues such as electricity, and there's also a problem in terms of waste. And obviously that also heightens the issue of our public health hazards. But also we do have financial implications. The discussion has always been there that we need finance in terms of how do we mitigate and adapt to climate change, and the discussion of where the finances are going to be coming from, because we are struggling in terms of how do we fund, these strategies. So the same applies with our municipalities, and I think our official will then come into detail in terms of our financial implications of our municipality, and obviously is going to focus on within the confinements of eThekwini municipality. As I said when I started in my introduction, that we in KwaZulu-Natal we are facing a challenge of waste management, but I think it's something that goes beyond the province, and I think it's mainly because of the increased population in our country as well as the nature of our economies, which then has led us into generating more waste, especially domestic waste. Hence, we are struggling to be able to, within, through our municipalities, because they are the ones who are supposed to be providing these basic services, to implement proper sustainable waste management systems. But obviously that goes beyond that. And I think another factor is the fact that our municipalities are now outsourcing, these waste services. So that's another challenge which is going to impact on how we then able to deal with the issues of waste. And obviously, because of climate change events, we have seen how we have accumulated large debris and waste, and which then obviously has overwhelmed our current existing limping waste management systems, leading to unsightly landscapes and health hazards. I think when you go around town, you've seen how bad it is when it comes to waste. So we do have challenges in terms of our municipalities, and I think I've just highlighted in terms of how now it's also difficult for them to restore our regular waste collection services, where sometimes you find that waste is not collected, especially in areas where they have not outsourced service providers to assist in terms of collection of waste. And you've seen how illegal dumping is now taking place, illegal landfill sites, and obviously there's also a history behind the location of our landfill sites as well, which obviously contributes to environmental degradation. And also, we believe that as advocates for climate justice, that there's a need for sustainable practices in terms of our waste. There's a very pressing need for us to implement innovative waste management solutions which speaks to sustainability, such as sorting sources and promoting recycling, or basically promoting circular economy, when you encourage people to actually recycle and use waste, in other forms. And also, colleagues, we have highlighted some cases, but I believe that we do have comrades from KwaZulu-Natal as well in here, so they can also assist in terms of when we are going into the engagements, they can perhaps highlight or tell us more of their own experiences within their own regions. So what we found is that within the northern part of KwaZulu-Natal, most of our smallholder farmers, they've been having challenges in terms of sustaining their crops, and because of droughts. And I said that mostly in the northern part of KwaZulu-Natal, we experience a lot of droughts, which then has increased our food insecurities and obviously economic instability, particularly on that side. And because of lack of information, that you find that people that are actually found in the rural areas find it difficult to access information. So then, because of that, most of them were not aware that government is actually assisting in terms of interventions, in terms of subsidies, and then obviously they had limited access to that, and they were unable to rectify that problem. And also in terms of our Ugu district, they've experienced a lot of coastal erosions, which has threatened the local economy, local communities, and also which then has led the communities to, but also the communities, what is interesting about Ugu is that the community has been able to drive their own initiatives in terms of them in restoring the mangroves, of which is quite good, because then it means then, as I think we were having the discussions yesterday on the importance of involving the communities, which is quite very interesting about that the communities already coming in and assisting in terms of providing mitigation solutions. And in terms of Othugela district, in terms of Othugela district, if there's anyone from Othugela from here, can also assist in alluding further on that. But we are having difficulties in terms of our health facilities because they are overwhelmed due to flooding. And as I did indicate that, because of displacement, some people had to be moved to areas that are prone to flooding, and Othugela is a typical example of that. And there was a clinic that lost power during that time, and obviously you understand if a clinic loses power, it means what then becomes of that situation. And also we, as advocates for climate justice, we've looked at mitigation and adaptation strategies that can be applied in our province. We looked at the importance of community programs, but also we think that the first point of departure is perhaps us educating and creating awareness, because we've realized that in as much as our people are experiencing climate change, they aren't really aware of what climate change is. There's too many misconceptions of what climate change is, and people tend to think, in as much as we cannot desist the notion of spirituality, but people, the immediate thing that comes is that probably it's some spiritual, something that's spiritual that's happening. So I think that it's quite important that we push, creating awareness and education within our province, so that people are aware in terms of what is happening and how do they then respond to climate change. But also we looked into, the importance of us, because it's a province that's very rich in agriculture, that focuses on agriculture as an economic activity. We need to then conduct workshops or maybe find ways in which we bring in stakeholders that focuses on climate smart agriculture, that can educate our people and how they can go about utilizing climate smart agricultural techniques, particularly our small scale farmers, for them to be able to, so that they can be able to deal with, particularly in the northern side, where they can be able to deal with droughts and be able to continue and adapt to climate change. But also we need to prepare our communities in terms of how they can deal with it beyond, the interventions that will require from the government as well as other stakeholders. We need to be able to prepare our communities as well. We also need to improve our infrastructure, implementation of green infrastructures in terms of, green spaces, permeable pavements, green roofs, and so forth. So for us to be able to manage stormwaters while enhancing urban biodiversity. Obviously, we have an issue in terms of our early warning systems, so maybe perhaps we can invest to that. And also, we'd like to perhaps make policy recommendations, because I believe at the end of the day, the political school must have policy recommendations that we want to make. So perhaps we can establish a climate change fund. Obviously, that is going to be assisting which is going to then support our local municipalities in creating resilient strategies. But obviously, it goes back to the question on who must fund that, where will the funding come from? So, and obviously, we still need to figure that out. And also we need to encourage public and private partnerships in order for us to be able to facilitate sustainable urban growth and encourage various sectors to become advocates for climate action. Just to conclude, we would like to say that, there is an urgent need for us to be able to address climate impacts across the country. And we need to consider, obviously, the interconnectedness of our climate impacts underscores the needs, because there's a need for all of us to encompass approach which combines economic, social, and environmental strategies. And we need to consider the importance of community involvement. I think we've been emphasizing this in the political school. We need to go out there, engage our communities, because I feel like our communities have always been applying these mitigation and adaptation, strategies in their own way. So we also need to go out there and engage communities and ask them what is it that they do, what works for them in terms of dealing with these climate change issues, create awareness campaigns, and just allow people to participate within the confinements of how then we can deal with climate change. And also, we need to consider the role that our governments and obviously organizations like ourselves in terms of, how we can, catalyze climate change. But overall, comrades, and I think the end goal is for us to be able to defeat the system, because like how the slogan says, it's system change and not climate change. Amanda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think my responsibility in this today's session is not to talk, but to facilitate an engagement between yourselves as delegates to this political school, as well as the panel that I'm going to be requesting to come for. I'll request Mr. Tobani Zigalala, Ms. Bengu, and Mama to come in the front in order to continue with our engagement. Mama Lungiswa Matomela, I'm sorry to keep on forgetting your name. So that we commence with our discussion that will assist us for today. one as well. Okay, Alex. Amanla. Manla. I'm sorry, manager. I know this might be outside your protocols there in the municipality, but we invited you into our own space. We will talk according to the ways that we would want to talk, but you are a panelist here. You are here to share the view and the insights of the municipality. Equally so, I would want us to have a fruitful engagement so that we facilitate the session according to the way we want it to be. I would request that when time comes, I open a Q&A session. Anyone who has a question will come into the mic here over me for certain reasons. I think we are agreed to be captured. So whomever is here will come to ask here on the purpose of the camera.
Captured on video, not captured otherwise.
Oh. You know, I always say young people are the center of transformation, equally with women. Why I always say this? Women, they become primary teachers at our homes. They are the ones that teach better English because they actually tell you that you are bad. You go back and correct, but the only way to correct it, you go to the school, reach your teacher. But equally so, the information that we do not know, we go to schools, acquire that information. When we get back to homes, the first people we encounter are our mothers. We tell them, this is the information we have. So the primary responsibility of Advocate for Climate Justice South Africa was that an approach to say, if you have two people at the center of the discussion, young people and women, you are actually having the entire nation. Now, I would want to start with two young people that are forming part of the panel. Tobani, as well as my sister, sorry, I didn't capture well. I want you to give me your personal experiences as young people who have grown in eThekwini municipality and in particular the province of KwaZulu-Natal. What are the devastating implications that are caused by the climate change into your day-to-day lives and operations, either through schools and any other experience that you can bring into the attention of this house? Tobani, and then I'll allow my sister to come.
Good morning, colleagues. It's a very difficult question that you ask, Nathan. The difficulty of it is I'm trying to run away from, and I think thank you to Ulebu for such a beautiful presentation because at least it foregrounds a lot of things. I mean, I was born in Dorinkop, KwaDukuza, formerly known as Stenga. I don't know how many people in the room know where that place is. In the area that I was born, the largest river in the province passes by, Uthukela River. Of course, arguably the largest or the third, second largest in the country, but in the province I know for sure that it is the largest both in length and in volume of water that it carries. Just as personal story, there is no running water where I come from in terms of taps. The largest river in the country, in the province, passes through the village I was born. But we don't have running water. Today, my grandmother was born in 1948. Yes, 1948, because my grandfather was born in 47. They got married in the 1970s. My grandmother still runs after a water gun every time that we need water. I don't know if that's a climate change issue or it's an issue of structural spatial planning and the infrastructure of government in making sure that development happens. But that's one of my first personal experiences with regards to the environment and what it's able to give to us. Because we have water, but we don't have water, right? In the area that I stay in, besides Utogola River, there are smaller rivers. I mean, there is Nsimba on the other side, and there is Umatamba. I'll tell you about Umatamba because there's a very nice context of what it means. Umatamba is a small Anyana stream, right? It's not a big river, it's a small stream. It has a spring at the middle of it that carries salt water from the ground. I don't know if there is any other place in the country where there is salt water straight from a spring, not seawater. From a spring, it's salt water. It has been running for more than 50 years now. It used to be a source of water for the community I come from. It used to be. But of course, with climate changes and all those things, that water is now almost undrinkable. It's not undrinkable just because of the salt, because the salt we're getting used to, we will deal with it. We have ways of dealing with it. But unfortunately, we can't now go and pick water because of heavy rains and all those things. That's the one part I want to speak about. The second part is, in 2003, 2004, the area I was born in was affected by maybe the largest, I don't know, it's SARS kahle thina. So angazi bazongisiza abantu bakithi. Yini isichotho ngesizulu?
It's a hurricane.
Hailstorm, ne? The hailstorm, ne? When the ice comes from the sky. That's what I mean. The ice comes from the sky. It's hailstorm. Yes. In 2003, 2004, Nazi, where I was born, we were affected maybe by the biggest hailstorm I've ever seen in my life. I don't know if any of you here in the room have ever seen a hailstorm where ice as big as my head comes from the sky. I don't know if you have ever seen that. We experienced it, I think 2004, 2005, if I'm not mistaken. The whole area, especially the newly built RTP houses, which were completed in 2003. RTP houses meaning government free housing. All of them were asbestos in terms of roofing. All of them, if save for a few, for a week, for almost close to a month, we were sleeping in houses with holes. So those are some of the personal accounts directly affecting myself and the family I come from. I mean, we had a lot of wind at that period when we had what you call what is it called, Gonch? Roof. This thing, it's sometimes it's so, but I wanted to start there, Nati, before I go, I talk about what I've seen other communities going through. I want to start about where I've seen that the environment we live in has somewhat changed. I mean, the last account I will tell you about is something that happens maybe before I was born, and those who are much older and from this province will know about is Kukula Zigatomoe. I think it's 1987, if I'm not mistaken. It has a very devastating effect from the area I come from. But why is my area affected? I want to end there. But why is my area affected? The people who stay in the area I come from, where do they come from? Because they don't come from there. They haven't stayed there for more than 100 years. So at a particular time in history, they came to stay there. But the area they stay in is sandy. It's hilly. Doesn't absorb much water on the ground. So when there's a lot of rain, water moves at high speed because the ground can't absorb water. And as I told you, there's the three big rivers, two rivers around, and there's the Utola River. So you can imagine how the area is able to move water. These people come, again, I will speak about another area I hope some of you in the room know. If you know the Danal area in Stenga, where there is the big Hulet sugar plant, near Izinkwazi, Danal, but near the beach, it's a nice area near the beach. That's where the people who birthed me come from. And as I end, because trying to run away from saying many other things, is that those people did not wake up one day and put themselves on trucks and go and stay in an inhabitable place. Some people made decisions at a particular time that the habitable place that they were living in was not good for them, but was good for industry, was good for sugarcane. Maybe I would go past that also, that KwaDukuza, where I was born, is a very large sugarcane space, Stenga. It's a sugarcane district. Sugarcane is everywhere. And that has affected where we stay, how we stay, where we work, and the amount of resources we are able to amass to be able to create a life for ourselves. But we don't come from there historically. Some people, as I said, at some time took a decision that we stay there. And that has affected how we live, how we inhabit the space, because the space itself is inhabitable. Of course, maybe as we continue, we'll go back to that type of history, because I think Ulebo touched on it, that there is a lot of political, economic decisions that are made that then affect how we come to habit the environment, and how the environment then responds to the decisions that we have made. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tobane. My sister, as I want you to give me a context, because I think Tobane have tried to give us, I mean you, as a young person, I want to start with you as young people in the panel, to say, you have an understanding now of the general challenges that we face as young people in society. But I want to skew it and say, give me a perspective of a woman on a day-to-day who wakes up into floods in eThekwini. What happens to you as a woman? You wake up, there are floods, and you are representing abahlali baseMjondolo. What comes into mind to you as the first point of departure to say, where do I start? Based on your personal experiences.
Oh, okay, Amandla. Oh, okay, mina ngizoqala la ekutheni ukuba ngumuntu wesifazane ohlala eMjondolo is very hard. Worse and worse uma nifacene ne floods. Firstly, uqalwe ubheke i-safety yabantwana. Mawubheka i-safety yabantwana ukuthi badlani, sometimes as abantu besifazane esibhekana nazo.
Even to reflect upon it in a true sense of us, what we want to achieve. Mr. Bing, you are trusted with the responsibility at eThekwini Municipality, and I would want to take this position into a policy framework perspective on what are specific policies or plans has the eThekwini Municipality introduced to address the impacts of climate change in the region. And secondly to that, Mr. Bing, I would want also to understand how does the municipality ensure that these policies align with National Climate Action Framework and international committees, as well as aligns to the vision and ideas of the people in the ground? Because we have always tried to write policies, but the only challenge with the policies that we write, we want to write them through the eye of an investor, not through the eye of the people who are actually affected. So how do we ensure that these policies that are now, I'm stating, when we follow up in eThekwini Municipality, we are aware that you are developing even a response plan to the challenge, climate change justice. So how do we ensure that these policies, yes, they reflect the national objectives, they reflect what is needed in the international scope, but equally, they integrate the needs of the people who are suffering on these devastating effects? Thank you.
Thank you. And again, I need to pass my gratitude, to be invited in this platform. As a city official, we always look towards having these sort of engagements, because when we come here in these spaces, we are not coming here as experts, but we are coming here to learn as well, just to understand the perspective of other people. And then also we are hoping that the same people will also understand our own perspective, because one thing can be looked differently by two different people, So as a city official, maybe let me first try to respond to the question of policy. As a country, we are always, we've always prided ourselves that we've got the best policies, but I can tell you for free that policies are useless if you don't put the resources to implement such policies. I think that's where the gap is, not in Durban, but in the country as a whole, because our policies, if you read them, they are very nice, but now once you go and check, once such policies are developed, does the resources set aside for implementation, then that's where we are found wanting as a country. But let me go back to the city of eThekwini. So for us, when it comes to climate change, we are having two guiding documents that assist us to respond or help to mitigate the impact of climate change within our jurisdiction. We have got what we call the Durban Climate Change Strategy. And then the decision or the view that the City Council took was that the climate change work or function, it should not be the responsibility of one department, because it's a cross-cutting issue. You go to health, there are issues that specifically touch the issue of health. You go to transport, water, waste, all these are sectors which are the key function of government. They are all affected by climate change. So our responsibility as a climate change department within the city is to coordinate and then also assist and provide capacity for different officials, depending on the line functions that they are in, to prepare them to say, okay, when it comes to climate change, you from Home and Settlement, these are the sort of aspects that you need to do, that will assist us to respond effectively when it comes to climate change. If I make a simple example, we are at this stage, we are lucky that we are now in the 4th month without load shedding. But prior to that, we've been working with our electricity department to say maybe it's time that we need to look at the possibility or the feasibility of moving towards more cleaner energies, because we are realizing that as a country, our electricity, more than 80% of it is coal intensive, which when it comes to climate change, is because of greenhouse gas emissions, mainly carbon. So let's maybe test the feasibility of moving towards more cleaner energy, So there we are providing the strategic advice and the technical aspects to our electricity department. That's the same thing with our transport department. As a port city, we are having quite a lot of carbon emissions because, we've got ships coming in, trucks coming in, and as well as our public transport, so we got an advice for you transport. These are the sort of things that you need to include or implement on the ground that will help us to address the issue of climate change. So for us, just to sum it up, we've got, in terms of our policies, we've got the Durban Climate Change Strategy, and then also we've got the Durban Climate Action Plan. So the CAP, we call it Climate Action Plan, it's around how are we preparing the city to move towards carbon neutrality. Because when you talk about climate change, we all know that the main issue is how do we deal or how do we address the issue of carbon, because that's one of the most contributing greenhouse gases that we are having in the atmosphere. So if you read the CAP, it's got specific plans, for different sectors, tourism, these are the things that you need to do. Coastal and stormwater, these are the sort of things that you need to implement on the ground that will assist us to minimize our emission. I think in the country, Durban is the biggest emitter of carbon. I think it's because we're a port city, so compared to your Joburg, because I think in South Africa we've got 7 metros, if I'm not mistaken. But now in terms of the cities, I think Durban is the third biggest city in the country. But in terms of emissions, we are the largest emitters, understandable so, because we're a coastal city, we've got a port, we attract a lot of transportation, especially the big trucks now with our challenges with with PRASA, the rail infrastructure, which is a bit collapsing. So now we are starting to see a lot of trucks coming into our city that push our carbon emissions up a bit. So in terms of making sure that there's an alignment, remember that as much as we are in municipality, but we are at the third level of government, because government operates in three legs. There's national, provincial, and local government. So as a local government, that's where the implementation is. And then at the same time, you cannot just develop policy which is in contradicting with what your province and national is doing. So in every aspect, whenever we are developing the policies, we make sure that we do take into account that there's a guiding policy, there's a guiding national policy. For example, now we've recently seen a climate change bill coming into effect. And then on that bill, there's a specific responsibility that as a local government, these are the sort of things that you need to put in place, So every time when you're developing the policy as a local government, you cannot just develop something that doesn't talk to what is done in province, that is what is not done in national. It needs to be synchronized. It should be in alignment with what province is doing as well as national. National, it's mainly for strategic objective or providing a strategic direction of a country, and then the province, and then the implementation. So that's how we do the policy development. There need to be a synchronization or an alignment of our policies with what the province and national is doing. But just to end, some of the issues, which, Mfethu have just raised as well as my sister raised. These are the more like, some of them, they're more like social issues, which, I always tell people every time when we engage that before I'm a Tekwini official, I'm also a citizen. The issues that affect you also affect me. You find that we are coming from the same era, but it's just that when I'm here, I'm wearing a cap of being an official. If you don't have water in your house, I also don't have a water. It doesn't mean that because I'm an official, I got a special treatment. So we do understand these social issues. And then at the end of the day, to come up with a solution, it's not the responsibility of one sector, So that's why for us within local government, especially where I'm coming from, we always emphasize this engagement where different stakeholders come together and start to dissect the issue at hand, How do it respond to the issue of informality, What can be done, It's not the function of just local government or government per se, but it needs buy-in from different stakeholders. How do you address the issue of high unemployment? Is this a responsibility of government? No, it's not. You need to bring in your private sector. You need to bring in your NGOs, your conservancies. So the issues that we are facing with, especially with climate change, has to end. It's not a responsibility of one department or government per se, but it's a responsibility of everyone, whether we are working or not working. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smesobengu. I think before I go to the floor, I want to close out with you, ma'am. I was raised by a single woman who has raised me in the house of clay, and I understood what it means when rains come. Because this house meant there are holes at the top, and this house meant it can fall any day because it's clay. That's an informal settlement for us. And the only challenge that I have in South Africa, hence I took activism more serious, is that we end up being told about poverty by people who never lived poverty. And then they tend to define policies on how to respond to poverty. Can you respond to something that you do not really understand? Not that we are saying research is vague, but someone who sat and read a literature review is not like someone who have lived experiences of that reality. I want you, ma'am, to give me an understanding of, it might not be the personal experience, there's a single-handed household in that informal settlement, that immediately when floods come, the reason, and I tell you, the primary reason that anyone can leave Mbangeni, Mtuba, and go to stay Mlazi in the informal settlement is at the chase of the economic liberation, meaning there's a primary underlying factor of poverty and other factors. How is it when you wake up there and you know there's a neighbor that is crying because doesn't have a child? Maybe you are coming from work, from a night shift, going towards your room. You are not so certain whether there is your child in that room or not because of these floods that take. What's the trauma that is surrounding the lives of people who live in the informal settlement when these events take place?
Good morning, comrades. My name is Lungiswa from Abahlali Basemjondolo. I think nginenhlanhla because uma sihleli kanjena ndiva ubhuti esithi ungwa kwaDukuza. I'm also come from kwaDukuza. Yeah, I'm kwasamina ndingomnye who's affected by floods during that time. It was year 2022. Uma ubhuti eduze engwa kwamasipala esithi bazama uku-assista, ndiyazibuza umbuzo ukuthi ba-assista bani? Who they do assist, because I am the one who's waiting assistance from 2020 up until now. The i-councillor lafika thina, umasipala knows about our issue. I'm talking about kwaDukuza municipality. I'm not talking about here, Durban, because our issue is the same. Up until now, we never get anything from a municipality. There was no assistant. So I'm asking myself, ukuthi thina which planet ekufanele ukuthi mhlawumbe kanye sikuyona, mhlawumbe kanye they forgot about us. Okay, mandizeke la. This is a very hard, but yes, it is hard, but because I'm going through, or I've been there. Uyazi ukuba abantwana bahambe baye esikolweni, babuye abantwana ekhaya, ndingumzali ndimile, anzazi ukuthi mandithini. I guess what I do, I still do have a trauma, because even last night, I had a dream of my house flooding. I think for being here, because now we're talking about the climate change, we're talking about something that affected me. Or maybe Kalapans, I don't know. Because as Abahlali Basemjondolo, we do practice political school. We do practice communism. So whatever that I've learned here, or we've learned, so we're going to share at our political schools. I think it's going to help us. Kubuhlungu kakhulu, comrade, as umzali, because what happened, even abantwana bethu bebe esikolweni bebengenazo ilento incwadi ezokufunda. There was no stationery because everything was washed away, and so kulapho khona ekwabiza ukuthi izikolo mazivalwe because there were no road. No one obekwazi ukuthi aphumele, oye emsebenzini bengakwazi ukuphumela emsebenzini. So imigwaqo bivalekile, izikolo bezivaliwe, ukudla bekungekho. So I think the experience, it was my first experience. And andifisela omunye umuntu ongekabona ama-floods, noba mhlawumbe kwaye ongakaze affectwe ngama-floods, andimfisele noyedwa umuntu, because yinto le cabanga from 2022 kodwa isephila kumina because yinto endayibona ngamehlo. I've never thought ukuthi I will see ilento floods endlini zingena phakathi as the waves, you know, like just like this. And by that time I had a small child, so I had to run with my children, but I couldn't manage to take my belongings. Everything was washed away. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mama. I think there is one thing I want to, before I go to the floor. I once attended the Climate Resilience Symposium, and there was a CFO of City of eThekwini. And perhaps it's one thing that we need to also take into consideration as civic organizations. He speaks about the insurances that are insuring municipalities. He then says, in these insurances, roads are not insured. Bridges are not insured. I ask it, what is being insured then by the municipality? Because if these primary things that get to be affected when these disasters take place are not insured, and even these insurance they haven't paid the eThekwini municipality up to now, why are we paying insurance then? Perhaps these are part and parcel of the discussion that we need to take into consideration in the coalition. But I would want, these are your people, here is the manager, here is young people, here Abahlabasemjondolo. Those who would want to engage, I would request hands so that we move into the next stage of engagements. Sis Ruth, I go to you, my sister. I take you, my brother. I take you, my sister, as the fourth one in that row, and you are the last one in this row. Put yes, the three of you in the back, and then it's the last two hands that we will have in this, or three in this side. And then we requested that, as well as Ma, because Upuma Panle, you were on the call, but as we requested, can you come into the podium when you want to ask a question because of the videographic purposes? Thank you. For purposes of time, I would request that the panel notes questions and we answer at the end. Thank you.
Okay. No, thank you so much. Let me first start by appreciating the presentation by Comrade Ulebo and the input made by our various speakers. I think there's an important stakeholder, Comrade Lebo, you've omitted, which is labor. You tend to speak about different stakeholders, the importance of having them in terms of having a collaboration. I think it will be critical that you need to consider labor because of before you become a worker, you're a community member. And in number of areas that you've indicated, especially in the floods, let me talk about the recent incident at Tongat. The emergency services that came to rescue their workers, and they do suffer some mental illnesses in terms of the experience that they went through. So I think it will be critically important that from time to time, labor component must be engaged and regarded as an important stakeholder. I think from Ukabanila, from the municipality, we are mindful of the fact that you are a messenger. And the unfortunate part is that we cannot shoot the messenger, but at the same time, we need to make our message very explicit in terms of some of the experiences that have been shared by Amakabanilana. And perhaps one of the areas that you need to tell us that we are being told that in the next 2-3 days, we might expect some floods in Durban. What are you promising these two comrades from Abahlabasemjondolo, not taking it far, that these are the strategies that, or the plans that the municipality here, Yase Durban, is intending to put forward in ensuring that what would have transpired in 2022 doesn't repeat itself? Does it mean that those two policy documents you've spoken about are inadequate? And I would argue this, yes, they are inadequate. And then you've mentioned the issue of the resources. What is it that you are doing? Because we believe that we cannot be coming to such platforms and just make submissions without necessarily coming up with concrete proposals in terms of how do we move forward. I think I will end it there. Thanks, Chairperson.
Sorry, I'm going to make a quick intervention as timekeeper because I recognize this discussion is rich and we don't want to cut it off prematurely. Could we extend the session to 10:45 and then have a 15-minute tea? And then we might just have to push things a little bit further on, but I don't want to interrupt this rich discussion and cut it off right away. Is that okay? Okay, 10:45. Thanks, everybody. Another 20 minutes.
Amandla, I'm very much disturbed, but I will try my level best to be myself. I have a family here in Durban. Temokfigi Kukula, Ukoko Mngane wam. They passed on. And what disturbs me is to hear Obaba Ati, they don't have powers to do anything without a mandate. Who put them there to get their salaries if they don't act immediately when we are affected to wait for a mandate from somewhere? Because of all these levels, our Balayo, national and otherwise, we are the ones who put them there because we trust them. But when we are experiencing difficult times, they have to tell us about that excuse. We might well govern ourselves because they are not doing anything for us. We are the ones who show support from different parts of the country on what has happened here in Durban. As the representatives, what did they do in response of what has happened here in Durban? Kubuhlungu bhuti, and I doubt ukuthi uhlala la okungenamanzi khona. I doubt ukuthi uke wayihlupha nje nanokuthi ufaka amateki ngelinye ilanga uyoyenza i-dry run on the most vulnerable families. Umama uyasho la ukuthi kunabantwana abaye bashona abanye baye balimala. Angikhumbuli on the news seeing our leaders bathi bayoduduza or bayocomforta the families. Kushuthi we see important because we have to put them in power to eat our money. Imali lokumele ngabe kube isebenzele to do or to show immediate response. It was not there immediately. What does that mean to a poor working class? It's high time, comrades, Uguti, when voting, we vote with sober minds and vote with sober sense. And it's very, very important that we don't allow them to even separate or divide us. Ngoba lama tendency ukuthi wena umZulu wena umXhosa wena uyikwere kumele ubuyele wherever, those are the tendencies of dividing us. Because they know that when we are divided, there's nothing much we can do. I would like to rest there.
Molweni, Amandla. So mina ngudineo, I'm a special kid. So ngendlela vele indaba ye mental health ndinaga kakhulu. So I'm disturbed la ingqondo yami izo siningxolela.
So kule mental health, you know, like trauma, buti thobani ulala kamnandi uyavuka ngelinye ilanga kunesiqhotho esingangenhloko yami, and sisi umntwana ona 3 months uyashona, mhlawumbe omunye umntwana afika abazali abasekho bahambe nezikhukhula. Like kwenziwa njani? Do you have ama programs whereby kudilwa nge-trauma, like akhona? You awekho? No, it's a question I have. I wanted to ask Uti, do they have the programs whereby they deal nge mental health yabantu bayayinaga or abayinaki? Abantu nje yintuthwane. Ay kwabuhlungu bokumbuzo wami nje lo ngoba mina I'm a special kid indaba guys ningixolela skis.
Ngiyabonga ithuba, comrades. Everything is emotionally, especially once kwathiwa kune government officially phambi kwethu. Asizenzi senziwa indlela sihlupheka ngako, but I'm sorry mina ngifisa ngathi kube all the departments within your government are here just to listen and just to hear ukuthi sikhala kanjani. Nami bengifuna ukukubuza ukuthi ngiyakuzwa uyachaza, you've got 2 strategies ze climate change, but mawungachaza further ukuthi currently enikwenzako ensebenzisana ukuze nisebenzisane ne-community kuyini ama programs eninawo ukuthi nisebenzisane ne-community ukuze kudilwe ngale climate change ku addresseke further ama impacts. Ngiyabonga.
Amandla. Mkhize Sibongile from KZN flood victims and the poor dwellers. My first question is, as the eThekwini flood victims, who can take our responsibilities to protect the community? The reason why I'm asking this question, we still got those those family members who didn't find their loved ones even now. 30 family members, it doesn't work. First place is at Block C, it's 19. Out of 19, it's 18. At Nsungwini or Owushini, near the big river, it's 13 family members was lost on that day. Even now, they didn't find the dead bodies. And at Block C, I got 2 children who were saved on the 11th of April when the roof of the house was falling down on top of these 2 children, 10 years and 8 years. It's a boy and the son. They're having the scars in the faces, even now. And all these family members, they didn't get the counseling, including the children. And another question. If you are an official, is the one that I was experiencing while I'm at Yellowwood Park Hall. One of the officials was come and visit us, and they ask us the question, what kind of the dignity you want to bring it back while you are staying over there, coming from the informal settlement? This is a human being. They ask us as a human being because they knowing that we're coming from the rural areas, to Durban, to the urban areas, to rebuild ourselves as a developing human beings and community. We need to stay there. There's no choice. Why our municipality, they don't afford to provide those people about the psychologist? The reason why I'm asking that question, by tomorrow, I supposed to send 3 of the children who was affected during the floods because they didn't get the counseling at all. The psychologist, nobody can go on that side and check their communities, what's happened in their lives. Only one day, they coming with the cameras, with the news people and the flights just to explore. Only one day on the 12th of April, even now. My last question, what is the next step as from now? As our municipality, they failing to deliver the services on time. Thank you.
Sanibonani comrades. Sawubona above. Okokuqala engizoqala ngako. Oh, igama lami nguSimphiwe by the way, wakazwana. Let me start here with your problem as officials before I will ask the questions. One, the problem that we are having as officials, we are voting you in, then after, you are no longer becoming the servant of the people. You are becoming the deployees of your political parties. The problem starts there. Another thing with the policies issues, you are the one that are drafting the policies. You are not giving the communities the chance to draft the policies. Because what you do is not justice with the policies. You do your site visit, you visit 3 communities, then you draft the policies based on what you went there and asked. Bese mawusuka lapho niyabuya niyohlala phansi ni drafted those policies and wa impose kithi. That's another problem that we are having. And in all of that, you call us ama-hooligans and wara, those funny names, masesine enga si community. Hence you see the chaos at some point in our communities. It's because of you guys. Because you don't listen to us. You don't listen to your people that voted you into powers. Then the question, question. One, if you'll find abantu abakhuluma ngama floods into zayenzeka 3 years back, 2 years back till today, what is this disaster management doing? Because there is budget for that. So I don't think ukuthi we need to have abantu abasakhala ngaleyo nto leyo today, because the funds should have afikile ayenza umsebenzi wawo. And when we're talking about disaster management, I don't mean ukuthi nizonikeza abantu i-food parcel isakala mazambane, not even sakala mazambane, i-1 kg amazambane nethanga nempuphu ye-5 kg, and say you call it disaster management, umuntu anganakhaya. Another question that I have, I think this is the last question, being now to Pela. From your advice, because kuningi sesikenzile njengabazabalazi bazovumelana nami. We do petitions, we give you our memorandums, we march, we make noise, we bend tires, we sit around the table none, senza around table none, but still ayikho into elungayo. We follow those procedures. You will be telling us about the IDP, of which you know what you mobilize for that IDP's programs when we are coming to our wards. You mobilize your own people. Then you pick their hands, 10 people, for a meeting an IDP that talks about change impilo zabantu, change impilo zabantu. Then nizothatha izandla only 10 years andla, then you go back. Manceda la yikho noma submit noma senzani, there's nothing that is coming back to us until sesishisa amatayere. So from kuwe, what is advice, masos advisor when as an official, what is it that we can do ukuthi nislalele kwawona lawo ma policies lawo ukuthi nikwazi ukuthi niwa implement yini kahle kahle lemeli ukuthi siyenze ukuthi nathi sikwazi ukuphumula sibe ehuru. Ngiyabonga.
Mandla. Unite, working class, unite. Ngiyabonga comrade igama lami ngilakho wakathwala. Ngingazanga ngokuningi ukuthi ngizobuza ama question. It's just I'm sad mangizwe presentation yama comrade, especially mangizobona official. Ngoba these corrupt government officials akumelanga sibe nawo phakathi kwethu ngoba wasimameli. Mina I'm here to call the action, comrade. Ngoba lento lena yinto ecala 2022 until now. As long we don't have action, they will never ever listening us. But that action is not the action yokutotoya ngaphandle sibeka amatayera. It's the action of occupation their own offices. For those people abanganayo indawo, masibafakeni kulama office until babalungisele. Akunamuntu ozophuma lapha. Mandla!
Sorry. Yeah.
Can I?
Yeah, okay.
With the interest of Alex, there's an information that keeps on coming to say seemingly we have an interest in discussing this matter, and time constraint because there are other presentations that has to take place, but also we do not want to crowd the people in the front with questions to a point where they can't even respond to certain things. No, not saying they can't have answers, but to bomb them with all questions, like 20 questions at the same time. So we will request through you, colleagues, and I in a way assume this is the direction you're going to be taking. Hence, I requested to you to say, let's keep the conversation civil, and let's keep a conversation to be informative and building towards us attaining the path that we want. So we would want to allow them to have weights on the already asked questions, and we'll then move. And because we don't want them to say, you did not answer my question, no, but I had so many questions, I had eventually forgotten to some. You understand? We are not saying you're not going to engage people, but at least let's allow them to engage us, because it's an engagement. It's an engagement. That's what we are requesting. Thank you. I'll request through the panel. I'll start that side from Chobani. You share your insights on what you have heard. I'll jump Mr. Spengu. I'll go to the two of you, and then Mr. Bengu will then come in. Thank you.
Can I also just timekeeper coming in again here? So we're definitely getting to 1:15 already. I mean, a big part of the reason we came to the political school and we did it in KwaZulu-Natal is because we knew this is the place where climate impacts have been so serious. And so it would be remiss of me to just cut this off now as timekeeper. So I chatted to Shazia. We have the session around false solutions in the afternoon. That's something that we can do in more of a webinar format at a later point. So I'm suggesting maybe we cut that session. We allow this conversation, which is rich and very emotional and very important, to continue. And then we move the panel on movement building and political power to when the false solutions session would have been instead. So that way, that gives us a lot of time to engage this conversation and to give it the time and the gravity that's required. Does that sound okay? Okay. Thank you, comrades. And thank you very much for everybody's inputs here.
Someone took a mic?
Yes, there's no mic. Someone took the mic.
Don't take the mic.
We have in KwaZulu-Natal we have a wrong tendency about taking mics.
Someone took the mic. Is it on? Sure.
But we continue. Oh.
Can we respond first,
Okay,
apparently, and then we... I mean, in my other life, I'm a political commentator. I must put that in my other life. Beside, of course, being a PEC member of the South African Youth Council in KwaZulu-Natal and head of its policy and research development unit. But in my other life, I'm a political commentator. And I'm also a student of political sciences. So allow me to say these few things I'm going to say. Because at least there is not direct questions coming to me. But I think I must make a bit of commentary here. South Africa has a very big problem, Nat. You know, it's very painful when you hear what is being shared about the after effect and the impact of climate change to lives and families and people's and personal experiences. and then the response of government does not come quick enough. I want to say categorically that that's not a mistake. It's not let me put it this way. It's not because someone somewhere forgot. And I will take it back to because Ulebo, when he spoke about the slogan of the Climate Justice Coalition. System change, not climate change. And I will stick to that, to say, post-1994, one of the bad things we did in South Africa is the introduction of this red tape bureaucracy. So what happens is that there is a flood in Inanda. There are floods. People in Mzinyati who are, because of landlessness and land hunger, who are now building houses on flight planes. When the rain comes, they are first victims, right, of floods, right? And the response should be that government should be able to immediately take trucks and go and assist. But government can't do that because you then came out with the Public Finance Management Act, MFMAA, all these things that you came out post-1994, which says before government provides a service, must go and procure from someone. And you must wait for 3 quotes, you must, all these nonsenses, sorry, excuse my French, that government is unable to rapidly respond because government must wait for a tender to go out, for someone to quote them, right? That's the first problem. So the neoliberal project of post-1994 meant that government is not at the center of providing what is basically its primary responsibility of providing public goods. Who is at the center? The private sector, through the back door. Right? That's the first problem. And I'm sorry if I'm discussing too much politics, but I think these things must be said. That the problem of the response of government is that government post-1994 has been made to be hands-off, to be a facilitator of transactions, other than a responsible, people-centered government. So the problem you then have is that we can shout at Mr. Bing, and I'm not defending him, all we want, and we are correct to shout at him because he's been given the responsibility of administering on behalf of the people. But unfortunately, the forefathers of this post-1994 democratic dispensation have made it impossible for him to respond responsibly. And of course, I'm saying this because I know he can't say it. He can't criticize the government he works for and its structures. It has to praise the PFMA, the MFMA, but it's the very same reason why, Mr. Ping, you're under attack here. You're under attack here because you must provide rapid response to the people. But you can't because you must go look for a quote. Government does not have the internal capacity to do disaster management. Because all of those things, you find there in the disaster management unit, there's 5 people working, or 10. And unfortunately for me, I'm also a volunteer labor rep somewhere else. So all these heads that I wear make me to understand some units. The disaster management unit here, you must tell them the truth. Maybe has 30 people working. The rest of the work is outsourced work. You see? So you have a disaster management unit that is merely made of administrators. There is no worker who can operate a truck. The truck comes from some disaster management company somewhere, who we must wait for their codes. That's the first thing. The second thing I must speak about, and I hope I don't offend anyone, is that other than government being, of course, systematically unable being made to be unable to do its work, but government also in that problem that they are facing, then follows some logic from some IMF, World Bank people somewhere, that you must do austerity measures, you must spend less on public goods. So, you once systematically have built an infrastructure that says you can't do. But over and above that, then you are told now you must fund this thing less. So you fund education less, you fund health less. Especially, I think, it's funny, Ferrol, because they focus more on public services. So their defunding project is that you can put money on economic what nonsense, right? But when it comes to public services, no. Cut a little bit. They there's this funny thing that we've been made, a lie we've been made to believe, because some of us, I don't think, some amongst the country don't want to invest in proper ideological and political understanding. And that's why yesterday I was so hell-bent on the use of words. So this idea, listen to this statement. Government must create a conducive environment for economic growth to happen. What does that thing mean? It's nice, now all of us, we say it sometimes. But effectively what it means is that government move away. Let the capital take charge. Spend on creating the environment, don't spend on other things. Focus on us, create a place for us to happen. Don't charge us excessive taxes, don't charge us excessive import tariffs. Give us leeway to do as we want. Chop your hands, government, and let us do everything, anything we can do, we want to do with your people. Now we have a state that is hands-off, that is not at the center and at the face of defense of the people against capitalist onslaught. Make an example which my brother Mlaudi makes on the Socialism Nomtomusha book. When COVID hit, the price of ginger went up, right? Ginger and other things. Where was the state to say, oh, this is a necessity for this period. You can't have so much high prices. The state was unavailable because the state has literally allowed people to convince it to chop its own hands. Because it's not like literally they are chopping. They convince you, no, this is what you must do. And then you chop your own hands. The last point I want to make is on Mr. Pengu, maybe this will also assist you as an official of government. And I know also because some of the things that the way they are done are more of a political leadership decision than an official decision. But meaningful consultation does not mean you come into a room with 100 people with an already developed concept document of a policy. You present it to them and you ask 5 people to what their comment on it is and you leave. That's not meaningful consultation. Meaningful consultation should mean, and I'm saying this also as someone who works in the youth advocacy, say, meaningful consultation should say, we have a problem. What do you propose should be the solution of the problem? Individually as organizations, as individuals, as people. And then we sit in a room and say, let's discuss the solution given by advocates for climate justice and the one given by psych and the one, and see how best do we synchronize this solution to create a solution that will encompass all our solutions and make it a solution of all of us. But we don't do that. We sit somewhere, and also you go and you consult and you give a consulting company to develop a integrated development plan of a Tegwin. Then you go around trying to sell us this IDP now, which some of your friends somewhere in the private sector, and because policy of government is written by the private sector, do you think there will ever be a time where there is a policy written and the private sector is not at the center of how government is able to do its job? It will never happen. I myself, I will never do that. I will never write myself out of a solution when I'm giving the responsibility to be one writing it. My sister Tineo spoke about the idea of mental health. I mean, one of the things that people must do and think about is, how do we make sure that the solution we provide to disaster and things like that are holistic? But they are holistic because you have a government that is properly coordinated and is cooperative. You can't have a situation where disaster management goes this side, but the city health unit is not available, right? Immediately to go with them. Because when you respond to a disaster, you must bring everything of yourself. So that we will get there, someone has passed away, so let's deal with this. Home Affairs, the ID is gone, register this one. But disaster goes, clears the rubble, we wait for 6 months for someone to register our ID. Then the other one who has money, who must give us a bit of allowances, comes and says, I can't give you money because we don't have an ID. But the Home Affairs was not here. Well, you see, you all have this problem of a detangled what you call government, which seems to not be in tune with each other, not be working with each other. And for me, that's a problem. But how do you also center people? Because we have a problem here in this country of economic production being at the center of every conversation without centering the people and the human development of people as a whole. And how do we decentralize production also? So that we don't have an influx of people all of us rushing to come to Durban because that's the only place where production happens and where we can make a living. Because those are parts of the reasons why I think, as much as in the meantime we can't reverse the effects of climate change immediately, but the impacts that it has on our lives can be reversed if at least we are able to try to decentralize production. So let's have production happening in Stenga, in Ngutu, and people being able to create a living where they live, so that you can have an influx in one place. Because eThekwini, for example, was never built for so many people. The people who exclusively built the city of eThekwini were building for particular people. Some of them, the areas they live in, they don't face disasters, and sometimes we incorrectly make some things like floods and we call them what's called natural disasters. I don't think they're natural disasters. I think they're man-made disasters. Because of the special planning of eThekwini and the country, there will always be disasters because they are man-made. It's people who make decisions, who take people and they put them on a flat plane and they say, you live here because you can't live. You must stay in Mayville. You must stay in Katokres. No, you can't stay in Mhlanga, you. And then, post-1994, what did we say? Everyone has the right to stay anywhere. Of course, all of the Constitution says so. But do we all have the economic means to stay anywhere? No. Why? Because you have not made a point of trying to reverse the sum of the injustices that happened and make it impossible for me to go to Kuro High School, for me to go to Umhlanga and stay there, or stay in Constantia. I have taken so long. Thank you, and sorry, Nat.
Thank you very much. I think I'll hand over to Abahlali, but the common argument that I'm seeing in the discussion, Gatsoban, iti, there is no political will to resolve some of these challenges. That's my takeaway from what he is saying. As I move to Abahlali.
Maybe also just to say there is tea outside, so people want to trickle out in their own time, but this I don't want to break up the conversation, but just if people are hungry or need coffee, they can trickle out.
Can I just respond? Because
Okay. Let because Mr. Smiso is requesting to come first before Abahlali. Then I'll allow Mr. Smiso to respond. But as I requested, colleagues, let's keep this conversation civil because we are coming into the policy development here. That's our gist. As we move, Smith.
all right, thank you so much, and thanks for your questions. Perhaps maybe the first one, I need to maybe clarify, maybe it's the issue of English. When it's come to mandate, I never said that we don't have a mandate to help people. That's, sorry, my sister, if maybe you heard me wrong, I never said that. So I need to clarify that, because the way you've presented here, it seems as if I said we don't have a mandate to respond. I did not, in my response, the House can correct me, but I never said that. When I was talking about the issue of province, national, we're talking about how our policies need to in alignment with province and national. That's all. That was my point that I was making. I was not saying that we don't have a mandate to help people. So that's one I need to clarify. And at the same time, starting to one of the things that I've picked up is that there's this misconception, or maybe it's because maybe when we are coming from government, people always treat us as we are politicians. I'm not a politician. I'm an official. So because there are two different, the way local government or government operates. It's politicians, these are your councillors, the people that you vote for, which are involved in mainly driving the political development and policy implementation. My role there, I'm an official, so I'm not voted in. So those are two different things, because now sometimes I'm getting the questions around the work that should be done by politicians and not by officials. So maybe I felt that we need to clarify that. And then again, as I'm as a community members, sometimes I feel that you also take the responsibilities of your politicians, and then you directly translate it to us as officials. Some of the things, like the issue of IDP meetings, that's your ward councillor. Those are the guys who organize and mobilize the community at the ward. So as an official, I come and present the plan. So whoever is in the room, it's not my responsibility. It's the responsibility of the ward council and the ward committee. So now in terms of saying that we mobilize, we don't do that as officials. That's the work that is done by your ward councillors. So I need to again clarify that. And in terms of the responsibility when it's come to post-trauma, we should not lie as government. I think we have found one thing. And then Ubabu Tobani clearly articulated it nicely in a way of how do we then, the event has already happened, how then do you assist the community? I know that in the wards that you are active, that you've got projects, especially there's Ward 23 where there's Quarry Road informal settlement, one of the mostly hardly hit informal settlement is come to floods in eThekwini. Because we're having these good working relations with the community, I can put it clear that we did offer the trauma counseling. But again, that's not the only informal settlement that you are having in the city. We think the last time I checked, we've got over more than 500 informal settlement. And now, how do we then spread your wings to cover all the informal settlement? The only way to do that is to have an open engagement and a civil engagement, because sometimes what we need to be honest when it's come to engaging with the community, hence I like the approach of UNAT, is that we need to keep conversation civil, because sometimes what I've picked up, especially because I work on my projects, I work with communities. The moment you invite other officials or other departments, the moment that you say the community will be around, you find that they are not reluctant, because you know that the moment you go and engage with the community, you get insult, you got asked so many things that I know, I understand the frustration of the community. But at the same time, I cannot, be like, department. I'm not sure how to put it in English, because sometimes you get crucified for the things which are outside of your scope. But again, I understand the frustration of the community, because when they see us, they see the face of the government. And most of the issues that you guys are raising here, I cannot say that these are not climate change related, because for me, I'm employed at eThekwini as a climate change scientist. So my role is around understanding the climate models, understanding how the climate will be changing, will be affecting the citizens of Durban. But when it's come to the social issues, the issue of water, the issue of electricity, that's another department. But again, when I engage with the community, I cannot say, no, it's outside of my scope. I need to provide responses. So let me start with the flood interventions. Someone asked the question, after the 22 floods, what is the plan? Do we have a plan? Yes, we do have a plan. But the question goes back to what I've said earlier when it's coming to the plan. The plan is useless without the resources. You can have a perfect plan that you know that is responsive to the situation or the issues that you are trying to address on the ground. But if the resources are not made available for you to implement the plan, it's become useless. So when it comes to what we are doing as a climate change department, I'll just now frame my responses around my department. We are developing what we call the flood early warning system. I can tell you for free that I don't think will be affected by floods based on our system. Someone said next week or something. Based on our system, what we've picked up on our radar and sensors, because that's what we are employed to do. But sometimes you get asked questions which are outside the scope. But on our science, because I'm bringing science to the seat, based on our flood early warning system, which we've improved after the floods, yes, we might experience some rains, but it won't born a level of saving floods. But again, the issue of nature, no one can control that. But we do have systems in place that we track these things. And then in the communities that we are working in, we do have what we call community early warning system, where we simply send a WhatsApp message to say, okay, there's a possibility of floods. But again, I also need to emphasize this. When it comes to issuing warning, because the way our government works, I like Utoban because he's here, is that government has been put into different compartment. As a local government, you are not allowed to issue a warning, a weather-related warning before SAA Weather Service does that. So then that's a problem on its own. Because for us, we're in a local government, we're in local, but now the warning should become national. That's how things are, unfortunately. And then the moment you do that as local government, we are in contradiction. You know, SAA Water Service can take you to court to say who gave you the responsibility to issue a warning. So those are the challenges that we are starting to pick up as a seat, as local government. So, but for us within eThekwini, we do have the systems in place of monitoring our water systems, and to communities who we do have information with, especially because when it comes to community, we rely heavily on your ward councillors. We normally send them WhatsApp messages to say, on your ward, there's a possibility of floods. And then we are hoping that they can cascade that information down. When it comes to the project, we need to understand that when it comes to the floods that happened in 2022, it was not the issue of having, receiving the high rainfall or the rainfall intensity. It was around the land use planning within the city. In terms of our science, or in terms of the statistics, that is not even in the top 10 of in terms of rainfall intensity, because the floods are caused by rainfall, the amount of water that you are receiving at that particular time. For the 2022, it's not even in top 10. Not even top 10. I think it's number 19 or number 20, if I'm not mistaken. But in terms of the impact, it's up. It's ranked in top 5. Then we need to understand why the 22 flood rain caused so much impact. One of the things that we've picked up, it's around poor land use planning. In terms of, we are seeing a lot of settlement, not just informal settlement, even the houses that are built by us, built in areas which are not suitable for building. So already, if it's raining, there's nothing you can do. You get flooded. To the issue of waste, I'm happy that Usislo, who did the presentation, did touch the issue of waste. The issue of waste is a big problem. The issue of alien invasive species, because what happened in 2022, the reason why most people got flooded is because our culverts, our bridge, they were blocked. So meaning once they got blocked, the water got diverted straight to infrastructure, whether our infrastructure and human houses. So for us in the city to deal with such things, we are implementing a program called the Sihlanz Envelope Program that we are now calling it the Transformative River Management Program, where we'll be dealing with the issue of alien invasive species, catchment, especially the catchments which we know that they are, in terms of flood probability, they are quite high to deal with, to remove aliens. And then also in terms of designing our culverts in a way that is responsive to floods, because our culverts, maybe if I can use my laptop just to show a picture that our culverts now, before the water reach our culverts, it will have some structures that can able to track, that can able to trap aliens as well as the waste before it goes, just to avoid blockages. Because the main reason why people got flooded was around water getting diverted towards their informal settlement, towards infrastructure. In terms of leadership vacuum, unfortunately, that's built outside of us as officials. It's mainly around your ward councillors, because the way we operate, every week, your councillors are at City Hall for us in eThekwini. So now if your ward councillor is not vocal about the issues coming from their respective ward, it's quite difficult for us as officials, because for us to implement a project, or for us to implement a program, it needs to be initiated by your ward councillor. Pity that in most cases, when community decide to go on strike, they bypass the main responsibility, which is the ward councillor, because the ward councillor is the eyes and ears of the state on the ground. This is where you should be dumping your problem. Then they need to take it to City Hall. The programs and the projects that you're implementing, as an official, I cannot just implement a program without getting a green light from City Hall. Who sits at City Hall? It's your councillors, not us as officials. You see, so now that's why I'm saying that sometimes when it's come to the leadership vacuum, we need to make our councillors accountable, because even a simple project, for you to implement a project, even after you've managed to secure funding, it's need approval from City Hall. You cannot just implement anything. So, and the last thing, because most of the questions were more or less the same, Utobani covered large of it, that as a state, because of, again, dealing with the issue of corruption, you cannot just give a department 10 million and say you need to, whenever there's an issue, just go and use, So those measures were put to deal with the issue of corruption, because the reason why we go with the route of 3-court system, yes, it does frustrate. For you to advertise a project, it can take you a year, just going through procurement, a year. And then people may recall that when the president was here, he said that I think 1 billion or 2 billion will be given to eThekwini. But if I can tell you that money only came after a year, just dealing with the paperwork, because these things, when... Okay, do you want me to respond on that? Okay. So when you receive a money like that, sometimes it's got a tight regulations and requirements. For example, it's clear that it's mainly for infrastructure. So now if it's for infrastructure, then what sort of infrastructure? Does it cover informal settlement or infrastructure for the state? Remember that when eThekwini was affected by floods, I can tell you that 80% of our infrastructure was completely damaged, meaning that the city was operating at 20%. So people didn't have water, didn't have electricity, the roads were blocked, our bridges were blocked. So most of that money, it's mainly prioritized to repair and recover that infrastructure before you can start to expand, because now you cannot be a city that doesn't have water, that doesn't have electricity. But again, I'm not qualified to provide the details because it's outside of my scope. I'm just a climate scientist, but again, I'm prepared to engage and provide answers wherever I can, even though it's outside of my scope. I'm here to engage.
No, thank you, Mr. Bengo, for those insightful engagement. I think I'll allow Abahlali to engage some of the submissions that have been made on the floor and also to expand where they think it's necessary.
Oh, okay, ngizoqala lana nje Buthobani nawe comrade Dismiso. Ngizoqala ningixolele ngizokubeka lokhu ukuthi uMasipala very good to answer the questions kwi platform kanje, but ukwenza they are failing to ukwenza. Maybe my comrade. Oh, okay. Okay, maybe comrades. Maybe comrade Kosnati, we inviting abantu abarongo if we invite the officials. Cause the officials bahlala ema officeini, bavula ama aircon, baphuza amanzi and relax. Bangaziboni i-problems ezikhona kuma settlement esikuwona thina. And i-pain esiyizwayo nina anizwa. When you close your office, uyahamba uya kwindawo eyi-suburbs. Zonke lezi issues esinazo anizazi nina. If ama-councillors akawenza umsebenzi kahle, akayizisi i-report, angithi nina ne-relaxile because anazi ukuthi kwenzakalani kuma-communities. Anikwazi ukwalandela ngasemuva ukuthi niwabheke ukuthi ayawenza yini umsebenzi ngendlela eniwenza ngayo. And there is something ethi, wena awuyona i-politician, uyi-official. Asiwazi thina umehluko khonapha. Cause uma sesibhekene nani sifuna ukuthi sisebenze, sibona ama-politicians. Inkinga esibhekene nazo thina kuma-community wethu, asinawo amanzi, asinawo ugesi thina. Sihlala kwi-informal settlement. Sibuye size kwi-waste issue. Ma comrades, siyakufisa thina as ama-communities ukuthi sihlangabezane nomasipala kwi-problem ye-waste. Kodwa abakwazi ukuthi ubasimithe halfway. Uthi SW sihlalile nawo, wasifundisa futhi nge-recycling. Sesiyasebenzisana nayo ukuthi makeze azoqoqa imfucuza seyigcwele, basitshela ukuthi ama-truck afile. Kumele senze njani? Ingane zethu zihlala kwi-dump, zidlale kuleya dump, zizolimala. Ezenu ziphi? Zikuma-suburbs emafletini. And uyasho manje Dismiso uthi ibe khona i-counseling yethu. Ma comrade nihlale eKhetho Crest, uyakwazi ukusuka la uwalk mawusiya khona. Kusho ukuthi anikwazanga ukuwalka nize eKhetho Crest, ukuthi nikwazi ukuthi nisinikeze counseling if nisho njalo nina nithi bikhona counseling ukuza nje la eMayville eCatocrest nisinikeze counseling and ngebhadi nangesho on that day kusenzeka lento ingane ishona ena 3 months kunalokho basi sendela ifire brigade izokwenzani izocisha abani khona umuntu oshonile. So ngiyacela ama comrade sithi masihlala here sibe nendlela sibe no action esizowuthatha kodwa singabathembi ama officials because ama officials okwawo ukuthi hlalane officeini niphuza amanzi nivuli aircon. Ngiyabonga.
Yeah, to just add to my comrade's comment. Comrade Bingu, we do have a problem here. Sometimes we do expose ourselves in danger because we have no choice. For building our homes, because I do not just call a sheikh as just a sheikh, I do call it home. So we do build our homes because once we build here, municipality himself, so they come and tell us that no, this land is not good for you all. So they come and tell us about the values of this land. That is all, this one is not suitable for you because you cannot afford. Yes, we cannot. So once we move there, but we do not move, municipality, they come and demolish our homes or evict us. So once we move on the right place, we just go to anywhere because we desperate. So that is where we end up putting ourselves in danger. It's not our choice. As official is here, singabahlali basemjondolo, we tired of experiencing ama demolished, ama evictions. We feel like, but we don't feel like, we know that you ignoring us. So we're sick and tired of facing ignorance. It's too much now. So please, if you can, if we can work together to fix that, we are sick and tired. It is too much. We've been waiting for so long. The democracy now, it's took about 30 years, how many years? Yes, 30 years, I'm right. But there's no different with us. Siyabonga kakhulu comrades ukuthi nani kwi comments zenu nisilekelele sisenkingeni lana.
I'll take these ones as comments and submissions, and then I'll point at you. It's comments and submissions that I will take. You go there. No, it's those hands. Oh. Then sacela zize lapha njoba niphamisile nje bafowethu nibuye. But I want to say, before I move from this podium, there's something that was said by Nkwame Nkrumah that was projected there. Unfortunately, lucky enough, unfortunately, isiphelile. Ithi for this end, Africa needs a new type of a citizen. A dedicated, modest, honest, and informed man. A man submerges self in service to the nation and mankind. A man who abhors greed and detests vanity. A new type of man whose humility is his strength and whose integrity is his greatness. Those are the words that were said by our own African founders. And I truly believe in our activism there is something we can find out of that phrase. Because what defines us in the fight is us being human enough. We will be then better officials, better politicians, and better activists. Because all of us are needed in the process. And we need an integrated plan to respond into the prevailing challenges. I thank you as uNkosinathi wakwaSibiya, but I will come back to officially close after these submissions. Thank you.
Amandla. Awethu, thank you for this opportunity. I'd like to highlight a very important point when it comes to public service. I'm a public servant, not employee. So being a public servant, you are saying, I offer myself. We have Batupili principle. I offer myself to serve the country. And I would like to share with my colleague the constitution of this country. Is the principle of applying anything that is on the constitution is ubuntu. And what we are discussing today is a disaster. Not processes, not something that happened. We are talking about a disaster, which means we need an immediate assistance. We have seen South Africa during the disaster. They can have all the money, then they can share all the services. We have seen a lot of disasters that happen. They can build tents that can be there for so long. There is a budget for disaster. And I would also like to say with a comrade that we have noticed the trend in public sector, because it's not so many times South Africa have a beautiful weather. So I think this budget, that disaster, is the one that is being looted the most. That is why during the disaster time, they don't know how to respond to the disaster. And my colleague, if you are a servant of a public service, you cannot shift the blame and say it's a role of municipality, it's a role of whosoever. If I was sitting at your chair, I was going to respond to all the questions that are being placed here. If you are a public servant, you should be aware of what is happening in the public, and you should take a stand and be able to respond to the issues that the communities are facing without shifting the blame to the office of municipality, without shifting any blame that I am based in the office. You have to stand as a servant and serve the community and be able to take accountability. I think I don't want to say much, but I wanted to share with you that when you are a public servant, you serve the communities. You don't serve the office that you are working at. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's just appreciate Mr. Pengu that I think from yourself, you are a climate scientist. You are taking responsibility to a certain extent. I know that politicians, even when media calls, they start running away. But we appreciate that. But I think because now you are in this platform, to a certain extent, accountability must be there, you know. We are not going to say, no, it's so and so, they are not here. Accountability must be there either way. These are people that you interface with them from time to time. I'm sure to a certain extent they listen to you. And we hope that you are noting that if needs be, we can go and occupy their offices, because people out there don't have houses. We are going to even make them take their medical aid, go and use their medical aid to get psychologists to help us, you see. You've mentioned these two documents, the strategy and the action plan. And now you are mentioning that it lacks resources. I mean, the irony of what you are mentioning is that in 2011, we were here in the climate change conference. We were in that stadium. In 2011, we were here. And it's so appalling that now, it's only now when there are disasters that the municipality, it's only now they start to wake up, you know. They start to wake up. I mean, civil society saying put mitigation plans into place, mobilize resources and all of that, you know. I mean, there is no way in which you can say you are not able to get resources somewhere, you know. And now that you are not able to get resources for these two documents, it means they are going to gather dust, become very, very nice, and decorate the offices that have aircons there, you know. how are you going to, or what plans are you putting into place to get those resources which the communities needs? I mean, communities at the current moment, they need the leadership of government, you see. Comrades from ACJSA mentioned that they are willing to develop strategies to assist the municipality, you know. The question that I want to also ask is there a way of collaborating, you know? Naba bahlali, bakhona, are you interacting with them? Are you engaging with them honestly, you know, to say, okay, which services, psychosociological that you require, and who is the point of contact? And second to that, is there intercollaboration, human settlement, disaster management, health department, home affairs? Do you have some kind of a unit that is coordinating this kind of a disaster, you know, so that we don't come here and people feel like now we are bashing them? Thank you very much.
Amandla. Awethu. Mayibuye. Africa. Thank you, comrades. My name is Sifiso Dladla from Action Aid in South Africa. I was touched, Comrade Pengu, when you state that there are no resources, and when you state that what good does it make to have a plan that does not get implemented. And I was touched by the reality again that when you come here as an official, you are able to passively pass the blame to the elected councillors, members of the council in eThekwini. It's something that we've seen in South Africa, where Parliament blames government and government blames Parliament for no oversight. And like you said, you've got these plans. I'm a solutions-driven person. I just want to know, with all these plans, what role did the communities play in your 111 wards and so on? And, you know, when you speak about resources, and it really touched me for you to once again passively touch on that 1 billion, because there was no concrete evidence. It was just you saying, this is how it's spent, because you do not have the powers to speak about that. By the way, that was not the only money that came to eThekwini, especially around KZN for that disaster. I mean, I think around Patrice Motsepe's foundation donated about 30 million. And I think there was almost every company, BMW also gave R1 million. There was a whole host of money. And the saddest part is that when the AG did the audit around August, around that time, it found that out of the disaster emergency relief fund, only 6% was spent. Yet people have never had the resources that they need. And it pains me to see a black person shying away from the pains of another black person, as if they do not have a soul, as if they do not understand. It would have been something else if you were not a black person. I am not putting a curse on you, but I am saying to you, your bravery for you to come here gives you content to go back and fight for your fellow black people in council. And one more thing that also touched me with the presentation, Babu Pengu, that you made, that in 2022, almost 80% of infrastructure in KZN was demolished. So to me, it came to say, like you were busy explaining that 1 billion, that it comes with regulations which are very strict. And it says that first you need to repair that 80% of that infrastructure through that money. So as a human being, it says, out of that money, what comes first is infrastructure before people. People that are suffering. And the reason for that is so that there's going to be economic activities so that the capitalist system can go on and make profits. And people today have never found their family members. And yet, it must be day on and day out for you as well as other officials. And the last point, Babu Pengu, we are lobbyists here, not from only KZN. Mina ke ngizalelwe KZN, but I'm responsible for other communities even beyond the South Africa. Ukuthi uthi ama resources mayekhona political will ayikho ngisho imali ngakhona fanele kuyo approvewa eCity Hall. Thina lapho singangena sinyove eCity Hall mangabe wena usinikeza idirection uthi asize. So that kuzokwazeka ukuthi approve izinto because abantu bahleli balambile abanazindlu. Angikholwa ukuthi khona umuntu osaba anything like as long as we are doing it within the confines of the law. Thank you.
Sanibonani. Sixolise kakhulu ukunibambezela nelanga seliyoshona kodwa ngibona ukuthi kubalekile. Baba uNgcolosi engikhala ngakho kakhulu kuyiwana. Ngiyakuzwa ukuthi uthi iplan ikhona kodwa inkinga ngishawa ama resources. Yazi abantu kubabeka ethembeni ukuthi njengamanje senenkinga yokuthi imali kusafanele approve bese sikwazi ukuqhubeka sisebenze. Kukwenza ukuthi behlale ethembeni nabo ukuthi one day sizolithola usizo. Kodwa masizohlala sithi plan esinayo kodwa sibuyeli kubantu. Ubaba uNgcolosi bese buya ethi amakhansela wenza umsebenzi. If ungakwazi ukungena la kuhlala khona abahlali, thumela phela amakhansela la abawakhethile. Uwatshela ukuthi njengamanje siyasebenza udaba leni salisebenza sikwi process nisilinde. Rather than ukuthi sihlalele isigoqi izandla sithi ama resources awekho. Umgabadelo okuningi ebengithi ngize nakho uNgcolosi usengishaye waqeda. Ngeke ngisichithe isikhathi siyabonga.
Amandla. Amandla. I'm actually a shy person to speak in front of people, but this one it got me. Bawupenku, I think some of us singis mhlawumbe nje when you said an official, there's an official, there's a politician. So my ask was, what are your roles as an official? What are your responsibilities? You should have explained that to us to say my responsibilities is this and that and that. And according to my understanding, I think your roles as an official is making decisions and enforcing rules and regulations, right? And then our rules where my politicians is just that they gain power from us by voting. If ebuhlungu be waka busakusha wena buhlungu as a black person, if I come to you and say this is what we're going through as a community, and you go back and say, I'm an official, I don't deal with this and that and that and that, it touches us. It really touches us. If we don't unite as black people, we are not going anywhere. Unity, it's all we need. Umama there said, Ubuntu. Kasarage shubar moto ke moto ka batho. Amandla.
Mandla bahlali. Mandla bahlali. Umkhize sibongile. Umkhize sibongile. Ngiyaxolisa ngiyahlupha kodwa hayi kakhulu. Comrade uBhengu, into ebhlungu kakhulu angifuni uthi asikuthwese icala la. Asikuthwese icala ngicela lokho ukuzwe kahle. Siyakhuluma ngoba egcineni kufanele kuphume isixazululo sethu thina sabahlali baseThekwini esihlukumezekile sabahlali beKwaZulu Natal. Mina ngiwumhlali bengakhe eMlazi. Ngaba kwikhukhula ngaphuma ngenqono engigqokile impahla engisayiphiwe ngabantu. Kungizwisa ubuhlungu ukuthi kulo 2 years from uMlazi ngihambele iDazenuki. eDazenuki ikude nomlazi. Ngicela ukuyicacisa lento. It doesn't look, it's a rural area. Thina emlazi besakhe kuma informal settlement but amalokishi. Ilokishi. Baba ayikho into ezwisa ubuhlungu njengabantu baseDazen nokumebethi bagcina ukubona abantu ababethi bazobanikela uzosizo ngelanga babelinyalelwe yikhona. Lokho kungakhinta ukuthelo. Kuneyingane lana ezu2 zali imali indlela welaphe kwazo. Ubabwazo wazama ukuyoyidonsa esave zona noma wazo indlela welaphe kwakhe waba kuyikhoma for 51 days. Ngomusa kaNkulunkulu usaphila. And ayikho into ebhlungu ezwisa ukuthi laba bantu u3 days ngibhizi ngiyakubona insuku ilandelana ngiphuma emsebenzini ngo4:30 ngifike endlini ngabo8 bayakhala. Uma khona umunye okuthuthe uzama uqhamuka nosizo somabhizinisi eHammersdale ethi uzosiza. Anginayi right yokuthi ngemention ukuthi ubani uthe but lwamiswa lolo sizo ngoba ethi bangiphoxile bangisaphaze kwimedia. Njengoba ake ngenze example ngami. Mina ngiyumhlali angisi officially angiyona ipolitician ngiyisakhamuzi saseNingizimu Afrika njengomunye nomunye umuntu. Kodwa mangabe kuukuthi uyafika udadewethu lana uthi into eyenzo usibongile angiyithandi nenkulumo yakhe une right ukuthi akhulume silungisa amaphutha qhutshwe nendlela. Abantu eDazen ukubaba lihle iqiniso ngilibeke libe sobala njengezinqeze esele baphila ngaphansi kwesimo sokwesaba. Bayitholile idumbe ezu2 umthokozisi umzukulu wangcwatsha esesibhedlela umthokozisi ekwikhoma wafika sengcwatshe umzukulu. Wathi uma yithi uyobeka isikhalo sakhe ofisini kwathiwa ngeke sisakwazi ukukusiza ngoba uyingcwabelile umntwana. Bekufanele lo mntwana ahlale ekulesa simo sokuba decomposed up until when? Bekufanele uma wakhe ahlale esenhlungwini kuze kunamhlanje abantu bakhokhela amapolisi. Ngobani kuthiwa ngeke bakwazi ukudeclare as a deceased. Engikubonga ngomusa kaNkulunkulu. Isincane isikhathi ngisimithile kodwa igama i-decision ekhona iyaphuma manje i-magistrate court e-high court ePine Town imabezo ko declare ukuthi bashonile laba bantu. Kungani umasipala wethu esifeyila siyitheku? Kungani umasipala wethu ehluleka ukusipholisa amanxeba abantu bahlele emanzini bengazazi ubani omelana nalento kunzima kuumuntu oyedwa? How much more 13 family members? Kungani nizwisa ubuhlungu sabantu besifazane? Sizofika sezubuhlungu sibathwele abantwana nisilahle sibakhulise niphinde nihluleke futhi ukuthi nisifukamele nabo noma sebethule. Hayi anikho fair. Awukho fair umasipala wethu angifuni uqamba manga kubhlungu. Akuyona ipanel discussion yokuqala lengihleli kuyona. Nge24 April before siye kuma elections bengise Radisson kwi panel discussion nama mayors. Empty promises. Sonke isikhathi empty promises up until when? Say feeling ngane. And the majority abantwana abashoni abantwana abancane. Abameli bakusasa odokotela ama guardians wethu thina siyafa. Angisi ingculazi khona. Siyafa. Kwenzekeni? Ay guys, it's unfair. Sihlele emgwaqweni siyafana nabantu abahlele emgwaqweni if uzothi ubekiwe kwi temporary kodwa ushare nabantu abayi5 erumini A1 it's a squatter camp impilo esiphilayo ya ku Russell Street ngingakuthatha ngikubeke bayashona abantu sesishonelwa abantu abawu6 uze la ePoint kuMahatma Gandhi uhambe uyobuka impilo abavunyela ukuthi babuyise izingane zabo ziyagxoshwa asimpilo yomuntu leyo abantu ade behlela emizini yabo uye ereserve bayashona abantu kujumpa amafence kungenwa ngaphakathi bagwazwa abantu bayababulala ngobani sifelani simnyama sekwanele bakithi ukuthi isengwe noma isilele phansi siphelile siuzulu sifile kwenzekeni ngicela isisombululo kulento.
Ngiyaxolisa ukuthi Elias angeze ngikwazi ukuzisho igama lami nguNqobile Cleopatra wakashezi. Babheng ngicela ukuthi konke lokho esikudiscussa la, don't take it as a personal attack, but take it as if we are starting to build in going together rather than ukuthi kube nabashiyekayo endleleni or kube nabanye abangaphambi or abazi ngaphambi or ngaphezu kwabanye abantu. Inkosi eyangithanda ukuthi ngize emva kwa Comrade Sifiso because kune bathupili policy omunye comrade oke wayithatha, but most pendula ophendule ukuthi imali isebenze ukudila nezinto ngaphezulu kwempilo zabantu. So ngicela ukuthi Ubuntu, the policy of Ubuntu, asizameni in all the levels ukuthi sihambise phambili, because nathi in other province sesathi mesibona okwenzeka la eThekwini azange size sicabangele izibaya neinkomo nemizi, sesacabangela abantu neimpilo zabo kuqala. And to assure you, ama councillors lawa okhuluma ngawo othi bayiso nomlomo nakho konke in between abahlali nama officials and nabo, sizoba nenkinga lapho bafu, because third hand information iyahlupha, because mengabe kube nina ndlulisa umlayezo owukuthi uzofika so unama tweaks, and ama tweaks yiwo lawa azoyenza ukuthi everywhere you go as officials you are seen as animals. So into engicelayo mina ukuthi if niyazi ukuthi kunama stakeholders awukuthi, rather than ukuthi convey the message via councillors, bring all those stakeholders together, because mawuthi uzokhuluma ngabo data WhatsApp messages mengabuza nje la bayingakho abaphatha ama blueberry angakhona nokubona ukuthi kwenzakalani emhlabeni. What about abogogo nabomkhulu abahlala kulezo zindlu lezo abangena ngisho ifone umuntu relaya kumakhelwane ukuthi azomtshela imessage ngaleso sikhathi esithile? And ngibhlungu ngoba kuze wena and uyabonakala ukuthi umuntu oyithobile. Imali idliwe bafu and isazoqhubeka nokudliwa. We saw it happening ngama PPEs, we saw it happening nge-disaster eyenzeke la eThekwini. Even though ningathi noma singathi balancesani manje, yenzani balance ledger, nisprove ukuthi imali engake isebenze kuthini, kunemali engeke izivele ukuthi iphelele kuphi. And I think it's high time ukuthi kumele kuqalelwe ama councillors and all officials bafunde ukupledge to the community, because ni prioritize ama salaries over everything else. And that's not what we want as abantu. Ukuze sizohloniphanani futhi sazane ukuthi sabantu, mele siqale khona lapho. Ngoba if wena uthi I know I'm an officially, as long as I'm safe because my salary is safe, what about the very most vulnerable ones? Ngicela ukuphela khona lapho.
Sengikhohliwe ngiyaxolisa babu Ubheng, ubaba unokugula bengimhlalise phansi ngathi ngizomsukumisa egcineni.
Good morning, everybody. Ngiyabulisa abantwana basekhaya. Nina niphuma endlini. I'd like to give you a hug of gratitude and ngicela ukunikhuthaza. I'd like you to touch my hand with you and feel your hands in me. I'm giving a personal touch to you, which emanates from the bottom of my heart, which I feel I've got a common touch with you. The struggle that I went to 50 years ago, seems never to be diminished. And it seems that there's not yet uhuru in Tanzania. Today, we have been talking and day in and out of what is called the priority of service delivery. The essence of the topic today is just plain service delivery. Service which is given by a paid person to an unpaid person. A service which is given to a community, no matter whether it is at high level or at low level. But seemingly, when services need to be given to the most vulnerable, there's always a buck being passed. That the responsibility is being passed to the next department. Service delivery seems to be politicized today. You cannot politicize service delivery because it is what the people did. It is what the people put people in power for, to serve them as servants of the people. Now, if a person has accepted the job and a person through applications of more than 10 is been singled out and put into job because it's a lucky, fortunate person to have that job, this person who is in the job today gives an excuse. What I'm saying is, I'm not going to talk a lot of things because people have talked here, but there's an outcry and a priority for service delivery, no matter in what circumstances it would be. It is a pity that the most vulnerable are put in a plight of state because there's an excuse of land. My struggle initially was for land. When you conglomerate people in one disaster area and you let them stay there for that same disaster area, people who put themselves there for more than 30 years, what is your outlook at the end of the day? You still expect disaster, but you don't even give a relief, even a small relief. But people who are in jobs of agency do not act on that agency. Generally speaking, I'm very touched, and I think this is all nonsense that we can have a government still going on and on and on like this. And another thing, we know South Africa is a very water-scarce country. We know very well that they should be planning and planning ahead. What type of planners do we have in our government, in offices of well-being? People sit in office and what do they plan? What is a town planner? And employs so many, has got so many departments under him. Tell me, if we harvest and capture this water of the rainwater, which is God-given, because we say at KZN we don't have water. And yet we've got scientists employing me in KZN. I'll show you wonderful things. You can actually take an initiative of what we are doing, what you did not or are not qualified for, to act on somebody who's qualified in that. But we have scientists, we've got experts, or so-called experts, employed in our government works. I think if it is a well-planned government and we want to capture water and harvest water, we should put proper systems in place. Hopefully, newly built dams going forward for future preparations. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, colleagues and comrades. Thank you very much to the panelists, as I will be giving them to say goodbye to all of you. But I'm a young person in this country. I like reality to be talked and be spoken. Part of the things that we argued thoroughly yesterday was, are we in a battle, an ideological battle, or are we in a battle of climate change alone. And the discussion that was held yesterday was indeed, there were people who believed we were in a systemic battle. Why I bring back this discussion is because I want to leave, while you question yourself, some of the few things. When Mr. Bengu makes a submission here, he speaks and tells you that I perform my responsibilities and my duties under certain jurisdiction, a system. He went further to say, when R1 billion was declared to eThekwini, it had some restrictions, a system. Now, I hope it justifies a question we kept on asking yesterday. Where are we going to find money? What restrictions will be there in that money that we're going to be getting? Hence, even our government, if we were to speak of systemic change, part and parcel of the things that we speak to, we can speak into the reality that you cannot outsource disaster management. Some of the realities that we need to speak up to is the tendering system, something that needs to be sustainable within our government. If we need to speak to the system, is it viable to have a policy that will respond to climate change issues in eThekwini while you have only one person who's a senior scientist, one person who's a youth climate change champion, one person who's a senior manager, another one who is just a pipeline of reporting, but no people will be doing the operational work? Where are we as the generation? I truly believe each and every one of you in this room, you've been truly chosen to form part of this coalition, not because it was done out of vain, but it was done because of each and every idea that each and every organization here represent. And we stand the potential to shape the policies of this country and take them to the direction we want to see. A future that is free of unemployment, a future that is economically free, a future that I'm not threatened if I go out of this room as a woman, I might get to be abused. These are all systematic changes that we need to speak up to. The failure of us not wanting to confront these realities might lead us into vain. But I thank you for each and every moment you've given me today. I want to say I have learned, I have grown. Thank you very much to the members of Climate Justice Coalition. As a departing remark, I'll allow you to thank the opportunity and also the opportunity that we have given you as our panelists. Thank you very much. Your departing remarks as well as the goodbyes. Thank you from me to you. We will continue to extend invites and we hope you will, in the near future, Mr. Bengu, going to come because you know the struggle that we've gone through. We tried, and this one, I say it openly so, off record. Mr. Bengu, I think, is the 5th person we tried to reach to eThekwini. Bravery is what defined him. He said, despite the 4 having said they are not coming, he came. Thank you very much.
Sure. I take the mic from Ungolozi because I'm in a very tight rush. And I'm sorry that I will speak and leave. I'm not trying to act like a celebrity or some important person. It's unfortunate that the students at UKZN have asked me to come and make some intervention there in terms of the program they're doing. So I'm going to speak there, and the transport they've arranged for me arrives at 12 o'clock. So I need to rush through that. I will say just this small thing, because I think most of the things will go to Ungolozi, is that part of what 2024 and the conversations we're having has done is this. The post-1994 political project or political order is under scrutiny and critique. But there is 2 things that are emerging. And I hope those who are interested in politics, and because politics, you see, we look at it as a very bad thing. Politics is a simple thing. Who has the power to make the decisions? Where do they get the power? What is their power in relation to other people? That's what we are looking for in politics. It's not some bad, big thing. It's a science that just looks at the concept of power. Who has the power, who has the authority, and all those things. So I'm saying post-1994 political project is under scrutiny, and its state or and its political order, its state making and the such. And there are two things that are emerging. One, on the other side, in the right-wing political spectrum of South Africa, there is the idea that there is nothing wrong about the post-1994 political project. The problem is that those who have managed it have mismanaged it. Those who there's been maladministration and corruption. So therefore, the right wing is saying, no, keep the neoliberal project working, just change who leads it and who manages it. That's the one part of it. On the other part of the scrutiny of the post-1994 political project is that there is a fundamental problem, not just with the people who have been managing the project, but there is a fundamental problem with the structure, the system that this project has been about post-1994. The decision we must make, some of us in this country, who claim to want change, is in which political spectrum in those two critiques that are emerging are we going to fall in? Are we saying those who are managing the state are doing bad, but the state and how it is formed is correct? Or are we saying, no, the problem is not just those who manage the state, but it's the way the state has been created post-1994 that creates the problem? Because all of us, we seem to be so much interested in social transformation, but we seem not interested in how the state is formed and how it performs. And if we are not interested in that, I'm sorry, I mean, I'm going to say this, I'm going to sound disrespectful. No matter how emotional we are, no matter how many times we cry, no matter how much angry we are, but if we don't want to understand how the state is formed, how it works, we're going to still continuously have problems. And we continue going to go into each and every platform and fight each and every one because we don't want to understand this thing. And when it is presented to us, we quickly run away. No, but it's politics. We don't want to speak politics. But the problem we have is, and Lebo said, the personal is political and the political is personal. So now, I wanted to say that thank you very much for allowing the platform. I know I speak too much. I know I may have spoken out of 10 in many things. I'm sorry, but it's discourse, and in discourse there is no, there is no barriers. I mean, we speak openly because we are trying to create a space of discoursing. I thank you very much. I will run off now and go and offer my 2 cents somewhere else. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Toban. Thank you so much, colleagues. And again, I'm humbled, especially getting questions and feedback from the members of the platform. So I really, really, again, appreciate what you guys have been doing. I know that sometimes as I'm an official, sometimes it's quite difficult to take the heat because since I think 95% of the respondents, they've been throwing the heat to us, and then we need to accept the heat, and then maybe I need to say this before I even respond, is that the 22 floods affected everyone within the eThekwini. I also lost friends. I also lost family members. When it comes to the informal settlement, I knew quite a number of people that stays there. I might not be staying there personally, but I've got a personal experience because on that day, I was there in one or two informal settlements, right on the ground, making sure that we are trying to save their lives. I know that sometimes when you're working in the office, people think that you are living on another planet, on a planet. No, I'm living in Durban. I got affected with the same issues that affect everyone here. And then if maybe I've been portraying that maybe I live a better life, I'm not. I need to correct that. I'm just a Durban citizen like the rest of you guys. The issues that you are facing with also affect me. On that day, I attended 2 informal settlements. Some where Palmit River passed directly to the informal settlement. I was there the whole day, which is outside of my job because of the spirit of Ubuntu. But if I'm portraying that I don't have a spirit of Ubuntu, I'm sorry. But people who have worked with me, they can tell you another story. I don't want to blow my own horn. In terms of not responding to all the questions, I think I did. But if there's a specific question let someone feel that on the first round I did not respond, they can again engage with me. I'm happy to engage, because the reason why we are coming to these platforms is not to be masters or coming to bombard you with information. It's also to learn from you, to understand where you are coming from, and then also to take back what you are proposing, because at the end of the day, no one can come up alone with a solution. Should be a collaborative effort, How do we deal with these things? The issue of service delivery as a government employee, it should be our mandate. That's what makes us to be employed, is to fast track and implement the service delivery. If it means is to engage with the civil organization and NGOs, so be it. The reason why I'm saying that some of the responsibility, especially around the councillors, was around responding to the issue of IDP meetings. Those things are organized by ward councillors. For us, we just come and present the IDP, that's all. That's why I said that's not because I was passing the blame to them. No, I'm not here to defend the city. We've been struggling. That's an honest truth. We've been got many challenges. Like any other city. But in terms of Ubuntu, it's part of Batu Bilo principle, not just Batu Bilo principle. If umuntu nje omnyama, a black person or a South African, it's something that is embedded to us. Ubuntu nje into yethu. Akusiyona into ekumele sifundiswe. Mawukuthi mhlambe ngiboye ngathi anginabo ubuntu, again, I'm sorry, angena umuntu ophakeme, angikaze ngaphakama. I'm always umuntu ophila nomphakathi, ngivelela emakhaya ngaba nenhlanhla nje ukusebenza eThekwini. So nje le ukuthi ngiphakeme cha ngiyaxolisa anginjalo bakithi. In terms of accountability, as a state, we need to be accountable to the citizens of this city. That's an honest truth. That's why our department goes to length, even to engage with the people on the ground, because as much as my involvement within the city is around the science side, I should not be engaging with the community because I'm involved in analyzing the data. But because we understand the environment that we are working in, we are working with the public sector, we are working with Abantu. I need to engage in Abantu and hear the concern and then see how can we assist wherever we can. Yes, some of the issues, I can tell you for free that more than 80% of the issues that people have raised here got nothing to do with climate change. It's around the service delivery issues. If we've been dealing with the issue of service delivery issue, I don't think we'll be having this platform, even though it's mask under climate change, but it's issue of service delivery. And then the reason why we are here is to learn and then see how can we help. Hence, I'm making a call. If anyone ohlala emjondolo noma ofuna engage with my department outside of this meeting, I'm happy to share my contact so then we can take the discussion and see how can we help each other moving forward. Because the whole aim is to assist one another. I'm here to learn. You're also here to learn. There's this knowledge exchange between me and you. And the issue of the role of community in our plans. Our plans, they always got reviewed every 5 years. And then again, we make a public notice. But again, since you'll have my number or my email, our Durban climate change strategy is due for review. And then again, we go across the city looking at different sectors. And then again, if you want to participate and then make input, you'll be allowed to do that because we don't want to be seen as if we are just imposing a plan that is not reflective or not responsive to the issues that we are having. You'll be happy again to participate in such engagements. In terms of underspend, someone talk about 6% of the money that went underspent. Unfortunately, Unati just sum it up. We're having an issue of the systems in this country. I make a simple example. That money come to us as a city, I think in February. Our financial year ends in July. And then we're expected to spend that large chunk of money within 4 months. It's impossible. How can you ask someone to spend such a large amount of money within 4 months? And then mind you, there's still an issue of procurement system that I cannot say, I know that Mr. Mkhize does piping, let me go and engage with him. Because the moment I do that, I'm contravening with the EPMF, Public Finance Management System, because they'll say, oh, I work saying Mr. Mkhize who only does the piping within the city. Kuno Nxumalo, kuno Smith, kuno Naidu. There are many, I need to be inclusive as much as I can. Doing that again, I'm delaying the system. I'm delaying the process. Hence, that's why we ended up only spending 6% because of trying to follow the process while we are trying to, while abantu bakithi benenkinga. So how do you balance the two? Do you just bypass the process and say, let's just forget about PMFA or maybe MFA and then do the procurement so then we can frustrate our delivery? But if you do that, aren't you opening yourself to corruption? Usimiso uyazi ukuthi umngani wakho umenzi wenza plumbing. Let me just go and nginika umenzi imali. Then umenzi uyibuyisa ngakimina ngemuva. So these are the issues that as a local government we are dealing with on the ground. In terms of the response not adequate, that's fair enough. I'm not here to defend. Our responses have not been adequate, have not been enough. You cannot tell me that as we speak now, there are still people who are on a temporal location. It's been now more than 2 years since the event occurred. I remember in kule settlement engisebenza kuyona, we've used one of the churches in close vicinity because we could not use schools because that means that will disrupt the education system. And then on that ward, there was no the closest community ward we could find. It was just 15 kilometers away, which didn't work. We ended up using the church. But now, the pastor of the church was fair enough because the idea was that the people would be staying for 3 weeks, but they ended up staying for 4 months. And then they're starting to build friction between us and them. So now how do you deal with those issues? And again, I'm an organization such as you guys, because to us as an official, there are certain things that I cannot publicly say. Because again, I'm employed by the state. But we rely heavily on you guys to make, you might think that you are making a noise, but the noise that you are making, keep us on the toes so then we can work. The noise that you are making also help us to open some of the doors which are closed, which for me as an official, I cannot open. I'll just wait for the council, I'll wait for the mayor. But if it's you guys who make such noise, it's help us to open those doors. Because as I've said, if you are on the ground, you know the issues, you know what people want. But at the end of the day, if you go to and present, then as an official, it's not the same as a civil organization or as a NGOs. We want this noise so then we can work. The only way for us to work, we rely heavily on you guys. Hence, we open ourselves in engaging with you so then we can understand your concern and issues and then see how can we help. Hence, I'm saying that after this discussion, I'm leaving my email, I'm leaving my number so that when you've got these engagements, we come and listen and then see how can we assist as an official, which department that you feel that is missing. Issue at DSW. Which informal settlement ahlala kuyona, then we can easily connect her with a responsible DSW official, because sometimes we give the contact number. Sometimes I always feel that it's nice if you know the face behind the number. So now, at the end of the day, I'm a public servant. My role is to provide the services to abantu baseThekwini. Yes, they will flood me, and then I'm not promising that I will solve everything. But at least I know DSW on this region engage with this person. That's my role. But if that person doesn't respond, I don't know. But all in all, thank you so much for this invite. And then I'm hoping that these engagements keep on inviting our department. Pity that our senior person was not around. He's on leave. And another one is on an official international trip. But invite us, because for us, we learn so much through engaging. Sitting in the office, it's nothing. The real issues are on with the people. That's where you get to know what is happening on the city. You are the eyes and ears. We cannot cover all the areas sitting in our offices, but through engaging with you, it's helped us to fine-tune and then prioritize which areas that needs really our intervention. I'm sorry to take time, and thank you so much for inviting us, and I'm looking towards working with you. Thanks.
Okay, comrade, thanks for your time and listening us, our experience and our feelings. I have a request, Babu Pengo. We are not fighting, comrade. It's just, yeah, we're working together, yeah. So I have a request that please, when you go back to City Hall, please raise the issue of tender system. We're tired of siphile njengengulube through tender system, because izinto i-service delivery ingezi, it's just because it belongs kuma tenders. Thank you, comrade.
I'm gonna go to climate justice coalition. Comrades, thank you so much for inviting us, and to all comrades who are here from different organizations. Thank you so much for having us. So we do need this solidarity. It must continue. Amandla. Amandla.
Yes, that's a key element of the Climate Justice Coalition is solidarity, comrades, and I'm really glad that we could create this space for this such an important conversation. I'm sorry it took a lot longer than we had initially anticipated, but I think it was so valuable and worth having. So thank you to the ACJ comrades for creating this space. Really incredible stuff. I've actually got goosebumps right now as I speak. So thank you so much. Just to say, we're going to try come back at 1 o'clock if possible. We've got some really exciting water, energy, food nexuses. We're going to try some water testing. We're going to have some exciting conversations about how food and energy are connected. But I also wanted to recognize what we're talking about is so deeply personal and painful and emotional. And this is real trauma. Like this climate crisis. It hurts. It takes the people we love. It takes the places we love. And I can see the pain that comrades are feeling, and I want to ensure that we give each other the space to feel the pain and to recognize the depth of that hurt. And I appreciate comrades that are bringing their emotions, because not only is this a political school, this is a political school, right? Let's not shy away from that, but this is about us as humans. So thank you for bringing that human element. And I also want to say the Green Connection mentioned that they have a social worker on call. So if anybody's feeling like they really need to speak to somebody, because this is really intense, then thank you, Fern, for reaching out to Green Connection on this one, that if you need some support and you want to speak to a social worker, that there is that opportunity. But I also hope we'll support each other, that we'll hold each other as comrades, and that we will stand in solidarity with each other, because that's what grounds this coalition, is our ability to work together. But let me not keep you any longer. I hope you have a delicious lunch. We are downstairs again. Thank you so much to everybody who made this such a rich panel, and thank you so much. I know our government comrade got a lot of heat, but I'm glad that he's taking the heat to others to help make change. Thank you, everybody.
For the 15 people who didn't get their T-shirts yesterday, please can you come to me before lunch?